Good afternoon, America, and good evening to Europe too. The SPL is back for another exciting weekend. We're into week 8 now. Mifflin going to be joining me on the desk for the start of the day today. Miff, how are you doing this week?
I'm doing pretty all right. We had some pretty exciting SOC games to cast right before this. If you guys missed it, we've been doing that starting up around, what was that, like noon? 1 o'clock?
Yep. 1 o'clock, and then also SEC tomorrow, so if you want to catch up on some SEC action, we'll be broadcasting some games at 1 p.m. EST, and then after the SPL, we'll have the amateur casters bring us some of the other SEC games too. But enough about all that, we're into week 8, and here's a little look at the schedule for the week. eUnited up against Obey Alliance, and Sanguine over to Renegades later on in the day too. But we're going to start things off with eUnited versus Obey here, Miff, and looking at exactly how this one's played out between them so far. How are you feeling going into this set? Have you got a favorite yourself here?
I really do think, controversial opinion alert, I think Obey might be favored out here simply based off of playstyle. We see that Obey has been shifting their focus towards a mid-game warrior composition where they really hit their stride around level 12, whereas eUnited is almost completely dependent on whether or not Scream and Hurrywind are able to pop off, and even then they're more of a late-game centric comp. They usually draft around mobility and being able to play around objectives, and this new Obey roster might be able to put the kibosh to that.
Well, you see the standings there. United currently in 6th place. Remember, the playoffs are fast approaching. The top 6 teams will make the playoffs, whereas the bottom 2 will not make it. So as it stands, it's looking like Renegades and Obey, but Obey still have a chance to bounce back potentially if they can find wins like this up against eUnited today. Now, eUnited themselves, let's have a look at them and see exactly how they've been doing as of late, Mifflin. How do you feel about their play style? Like, what is it that we've seen out of eUnited so far? Like, what seems to be their goals in the game?
It really seems like they are incredibly objective focused. They're trying to play the map through mobility, shift it up. If they group up around Gold Fury, you have to be worried about Pyromancer. If they group up around Pyro, you have to be worried about Gold Fury, because Hurrywind's been playing a lot of Yanis. We see that Genetics has shifted his focus towards Horus, and they're able to play it incredibly well. And outside of that, it's really conflict-adverse in the early game.
Well, I will say as well, this whole little matchup between the two and eUnited themselves, how have they been performing as of late? Because it seems to be very hit or miss. Like, they got off to I would say a decent start, but since then, they've started to falter again now. Obviously, they had that replacement of Genetics into the league here, Miff, but then, since then, they've kind of been like a bit hit or miss for me.
It's a degree of inconsistency. I don't want to pin it on this new player because they have seen relative success since picking up Genetics. Maybe it's the honeymoon phase may have ended. They're starting to have to work through some of the issues that they had beforehand that can't be completely resolved just by picking up a new player. Right now, it seems like there's a bit of a shift in focus. In the first couple weeks, they were almost completely dependent on Scream, but now it seems like they're starting to play through Snoopy a little bit more. They're starting to play through Hurrywind a lot more. We're seeing that Variety's been getting a lot of ganks out of the jungle, and that's not really how they played in the first couple weeks, so it might just be growing pains as they adjust their new style.
Yeah, interesting. Well, we'll see exactly how this one plays out for eUnited here today too, because their opposition, Obey, are someone that's trying to realistically get themselves going once again, find some sort of momentum. They won a game a couple of weeks ago, obviously off the back of a couple of losses recently. They're still struggling there, or Obey. But let's have a look at how eUnited feel about going into this one. We had an interview with Scream earlier on today.
All right, guys, I'm here with Scream, the jungler for eUnited, talking to him about their matchup with Obey. Now, Scream kind of at a high level. It's been maybe an up and down road for you guys. Lost to Renegades last week, but before that, a 2-0 over Radiance. How's the team kind of mentally handling some of the tough sledding maybe that you've had up to this point?
For us, it's kind of fine, honestly. I mean, individually, I'm not really sure. I mean, because some people like to keep in some of their ideas, but I think that for me personally, I think it's fine. I mean, we can come out and we play really well sometimes, or we come out and we play really bad sometimes. It's kind of like a 50-50, I guess.
Right.
But I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing as long as, we can, up it to maybe like a 70-30 or like,
right.
Even higher. But I think as a team, we're taking it pretty well because we talk about a lot of things after games. We take practice, mostly seriously. There's a few games here and there, but I mean,
sure.
I think it's pretty good though.
Well, I mean, you're spot on. I mean, when you guys are swinging, you look like one of the best teams in this league. So maybe build some consistency there, and the heavy flow of wins will start rolling down. But your matchup is against Obey here today. What have you made with this new kind of age Obey squad with Sino?
I think Sino does a lot for this team. I think specifically Sino and Wolfie are, their star players because they're both really good players. And I think they do most of like the shot calling for that team, I'm pretty sure.
Right.
But you definitely have to give them some respect because they can definitely win some games. Sino's been playing a lot of different things in the jungle lately. He brought out the Nike when he played. He's been playing a lot of Amana. And I think that catches a lot of teams off guard. But I've played versus Sino for, years now because, he played in like Season 4, Season 5, and Season 6. So I think I have a better grasp on what Sino can do with a lot of the things that he does. So I think that generally we might be able to do a little bit better versus him than other teams.
Yeah, I guess for you specifically, does that mean maybe going into this matchup for you, kind of looking specifically at the jungle matchup, does your prep going into game change all that much with it being Sino now, or you kind of go through the same paces that you would normally go through prior to a big matchup?
The difference is, well, I think that I personally give them a little bit more respect as a team with Sino than I would have before. That's just, I just kind of, that's how I respect my opponents based on stuff like that. But our prep is generally the same. We take every team pretty seriously. Like we go through like we talk about draft for like a few hours the day before, and then we go over it the next morning as well. So, or the morning of the game. But I think that we just take it pretty much the same.
Well, Scream, this is going to be an absolute blast to watch. Best of luck to you, and thanks for talking with me.
Thank you.
Well, definitely an interesting take from Scream there, Mifflin, exactly how he feels about the situation with Obey. He thinks it's Wolfie and Sino being the main shot callers, and they're the ones to respect. But more importantly, he feels that, Sino, he can get the measure of to an extent. He kind of knows that Sino's going to pull out some unusual picks, and Scream is known for that too.
Maybe there's a bit of a kindred spirit between the two, being able to just play at the top level with these off-meta picks. Maybe he just feels like he can relate to Sino at a very high level. I think that's fair to point out. I mean, junglers are always been a cult of their own. They've always been birds of a feather. So I like seeing that mutual respect.
Yeah, we'll see how much of that mutual respect continues into the game, though. But here's a little look back at some of the players that we've seen so far out of eUnited and obviously of Obey, too. Now, one thing to mention as well, if you're noticing Ghost Gaming, I'm just going to bring that up real quick because a few members in chat are talking about it. Ghost Gaming have replaced the name Rival. Rival are now known as Ghost Gaming. Yes, Ghosts were once upon a time Radiance, and Radiance are now Radiant, but then you've also got Ghosts who are now Rival, but Rival were Rival before that. It's very confusing. It'll make sense soon enough. Don't worry too much about it. Rival are now Ghost, Radiance is still Radiance, no problems there, all the stuff's updated. We shouldn't see any more of it happen, hopefully, so we should be good to go. But turning over now towards Obey, Myth, what is it about their playstyle that you've seen? Like, what seems to be their game plan going into the games as of late? Like, what has been their major focus?
It seems like we see early aggression out of inbound to try and create a lightning rod in that long lane to create space for Sino to try and get at least a 1-level lead, maybe a 2-level lead, and then we start to see constant aggression in that 3v3 through mid. That seems to be Obey's go-to strategy, and we see every single fight, every single engagement, either Sino's engaging and finding these huge knockups on Nike, or he's playing this Vamana that we've started to see in the jungle picked up, and he plays it incredibly assassin-focused with this more auto-attack focused build. He really goes squishy. He likes to loop very deep into the back line. He goes all the way around the fight, and Obey generally group up as 4 in that late game team fight phase and try and create a fight so that Sino can flank. It's a little bit one trick in that it's really the majority of how Obey comes out ahead in these team fights is whether or not Sino can get that flank to really work out for them, but it's a very good strategy.
Well, very interestingly enough, we've seen a lot of stuff out of Sino so far. Will he mix it up or what? But we did get a chance to sit down and have a little chat with Wolfie before this set and see how he felt about going into it.
All right, guys, I'm here with Wolfie, mid laner for Obey, and we're talking to him about their matchup against eUnited here today. Now, Wolfie, we haven't had the chance to pregame chat with you guys in a while. Let's zoom out. The last 3 games you guys have had, all 3 game sets, one of them a win for you guys. It's been kind of a whirlwind, I think, following this Obey squad. How's the mentality been, the addition of Sino, improved play from you guys? What's general team morale here at the moment?
I think the morale is all over the place a little bit because obviously we won against Sanguine, which was really good. And then when we played against PK, we won game 1. and we felt like we could be taking the set. And then I think that's where everybody's morale went down a little bit as soon as we lost against them. And then with Radiance, we had a very clean game 1 as far as I remember, and then game 2 was pretty bad, and then game 3 was even worse, which wasn't the greatest. But so far it's been okay for this upcoming week. I think this upcoming week we got United today, and then we are going to be having SSG as well. So I think we're good in terms of morale. I am looking forward to playing both of them, especially against we're against Wind. I'm excited about it. I am very excited about that matchup as well.
It's been honestly a lot of fun to watch you guys in the growth. I mean, without mincing words, a very difficult start to the split, and now seeing obvious improvements. So, what's it been like playing with Sino? I mean, obviously some shot calling duties, maybe going over to his side as well. Is it kind of like a different breath of fresh air in a way to be playing with him on the squad?
Oh, he's an amazing teammate in my opinion. He kind of takes some weight off of my shoulders as well, because normally I was calling a lot, and now he's being the main shot caller, and so is Bobby. Bobby's stepping in as well, it definitely takes a lot of weight off my shoulders. I do very much enjoy playing with this new squad.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun as well, not only just to watch, but see the growth on top of that. Now, you specifically, a big role matchup against Hurrywind here today, up against eUnited. One of the guys that when eUnited's really swinging tends to be through Hurrywind as well. What do you make of your mid lane matchup specifically, and maybe Hurrywind as a player?
Don't really know. I'm just looking to get out there, play my matchup, not really think too much about the player that I'm playing against. Of course, I'm excited to play against United as a whole, but no, not really. I never really think about like my matchup, regardless of like whoever the player is. I just look more so as like the in-game matchup, if that makes more sense.
It does. No, it absolutely does. You gotta look at what you need to do and what the team needs to do, and then adapt maybe what the other team is doing in the game more specifically. Kind of final thoughts. eUnited, where's the confidence at? Do you think this maybe has another 3-game set written all over it?
I'm looking at the 2-game set, and hopefully it's going to be in our favor. I know they're a strong squad, but we will see.
Hey, well, Wolfie, thanks for talking 2-0. He says, best of luck today, and thanks for your time.
Thank you very much for having me.
Well, hopefully we get to see if Wolfie can do that with Obey today. I think the biggest thing we can take away from that, honestly, is Obey are trying to find consistency now. They've got the squad together. They're finding a win or two here and there, but they're not staying consistent, and the morale is getting hit by that too, and the level of effort and performance is really struggling. So let's find out how this works out in picks and bans there, Mifflin. Because when we turn our attention towards picks and bans, Miff, I want to see exactly, what ends up happening here. Do we see a little bit of focus towards maybe some of the picks Sino's going to run in the jungle? Or do we try and limit what Wolfie's been picking in mid, which honestly, Wolfie's really just stuck to like 2 gods for the most part in Merlin and Raijin are his most played gods.
Most played for good reason. Both of those gods are high artillery focus with long range damage. They have survivability. And if Obey is continually going to focus on 3v3 engagement, having safety in your mid laner is going to be a huge deal. And he's afforded the opportunity to continuously pick Merlin and Raijin because he has these lightning rods on his team to absorb bans. If Sino is going to be able to suck up of a mana ban, if Sino is able to force you into trying to get rid of some of his picks, yes, you're taking it away from arguably the best player on the squad, but you're creating space for the rest of your team to perform at their best, which is so valuable.
Well, Obey taking away Horus and Aphrodite so far. No surprises in the Horus. Take that one away from genetics. Make sure the mobility, the rotations aren't really there. But what you can see across the way, though, from United, banning the Nike already away from Sino, the Raijin to join it here. I just wonder if they're going to go with that Merlin ban too, Myth.
Merlin ban does tickle my brain a little bit here, and it would make sense, but even then, you're leaving the Vamana still available. You're leaving some of these high-priority supports still available. Yamoja has been banned out, but it still leaves up Hercules, which we know Bobby, inbound, loves to play. Usually we see that get banned out against him. Maybe it comes through here, but Merlin getting hovered first makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah, no surprises there if Obey do lock that in. It wouldn't really surprise me too much, and there it's going to be. I will mention as well, we're on the live client right now, so this is the updated patch that these guys are also playing on. So Nike did get a bit of a buff towards that barrier of hers. That second ability no longer knock-upable, but we have seen some other changes in terms of balance too. Do you think we might see a bit of Rama at all this weekend?
I could only be so excited and so happy to see Rom. I would love to. That god is so interesting to see in the play field because he brings a very honest play style. And now with the recent buffs, he's going to be able to use that ultimate a lot more often. His arrows are going to be available. His mana sustain is actually a lot stronger now. He gets about 10, 15 mana back on every arrow pickup, which means that maybe if Rama does get picked up here, we'll see him go for early health and multi-pots instead of mana, allowing him to try and focus out and fight into this Uller if that does come to fruition.
Well, Ull is definitely towards the top end of the most picked for eUnited here. No surprises to see that locked in. However, very early Ganesha pick for my liking. It feels to me that they're just waiting to hold off on picking some of the other gods, maybe get some counter matchups. Because realistically, no one's going to pick Ganesha at this point. But it does make you a little bit susceptible to having a, you know, a different pressure situation in that lane. Ganesha's pressure himself, though, not too bad.
I think Ganesh is fine to pick up early in your draft because you're not really showing too much. Ganesh is going to be able to do whatever he wants to do regardless of what the enemy team is drafting. You're going to have that huge electrical wall. You have a fantastic silence that gives your team an aura of defense. Your engage potential is there as well. So if it allows your team to try and counterpick the rest of the draft, taking Ganesh, you're not really giving up too much. You're not showing your hand too early on. It's not like when you pick a Ymir, when you pick a Geb early on, that's very exploitable. Ganesh is pretty safe as far as supports go.
Yeah, that's pretty true. And then King Arthur for Obey alongside the Fafnir, so the support already drafted for both sides here. King Arthur for Duck in the solo lane. Obviously, King Arthur's pretty potent, and we've been saying that for a while now. We've been seeing it in play. But more importantly, this Poseidon pick from United as we go into the counterban phase, Myth. Is this for jungle, you think? Because it could be, right? It is Scream running it there.
Scream has played a fair bit of Poseidon jungle. I don't want to predict it just yet because we have a flex pick in the Uller as well. So that could go towards mid or into Hurriedwind's hands, or it can go into the long lane. If that Uller is mid, I think it's a very fair bet that this Poseidon does go into the jungle. But even then, we've seen Poseidon flex towards that long lane. So it's a really hard to guess at this point. And I think that's exactly what eUnited's going for. They're trying to keep Obey on their toes.
And you talk about that, look at the counter bans from Obey. They ban Hell and Naja. Like, one of those is a jungler, one of them's a mid laner. So it kind of gives the same sort of feeling that United may be looking for that. Achilles, though, now locked in. Once again, a bit more flexible. Can be run in the jungle or the solo. Now and again in support, but with a Ganesha, I don't think we'll see that one this game. But now Obey hovering over Osiris, too. And if that's locked in, which it is, that, for me, is in the jungle.
That is very likely going to be an Osiris jungle, which, I mean, Sino loves his warrior jungles. He's going to be able to do exactly what he wants to, which is dive into the back line, try and go for these huge flanks and deal a ton of damage. Banning out the Naja, though, I want to highlight that from Obey. That's a fantastic ban because there is so much synergy with Naja and Ganesh. If Ganesh drops his ult on Naja ult's landing, that you're going to get at least 4 ticks there, barring any sort of additional CC. So taking that away, that's one wombo combo off the table. I like exactly what Obey is going for here, and the draft is strong as well.
Kurdanos locked in finally for eUnited. Someone that got buffed just recently too. His first stance, his first ability, it now shreds magical protection too, not just physical. Could be one of the reasons we're seeing him back in here, Myth. How do you feel about the drafts? You got a favourite in this one, looking at how this has played out?
I really like both drafts here. That's kind of sitting on the fence, but I think I slightly favor Obey's draft. Getting Wolfie on Merlin, that's a check mark for a win condition right there. Getting the King Arthur inside of that solo lane, Ducky gets to play a little bit more aggressive, so that means he's going to be able to be left alone on an island and likely won't have to worry about any sort of matchup. Obey's draft has a lot of win conditions in it, but it's going to be hard on execution.
Well, I'm pretty sure by that draft we can tell Poseidon will be in the jungle, but let's get it over to Finch and Aggro to cast for us game 1.
Thanks, Hindu and Mifflin of the desk. It is indeed Finch and Aggro here as we move in to Obey up against eUnited. And not too long ago, Aggro, this would not have looked like a particularly close set, but I think I agree with Mifflin. We might be coming into a game where Obey are slightly favored, and it will be the Osiris or Sino in the jungle that we're going to be following along with here. How do you expect for this Osiris to end up looking?
Yeah, I think that it's no surprise that Sino continues to not find the assassin tab. I don't think he's found it.
There's no assassin in the game this time.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he's only played Thor as far as assassins go. Everything else he's played has been a warrior. So I think that this is a matchup where you can chase down the Poseidon pretty effectively. That extra movement speed that he gets isn't as effective, whatever. You're constantly slowing him with the 1, speeding yourself up with the 2. And I think that Osiris, I mean, way back in the day when Osiris was first released, he was a very, very potent jungler back then. Now, obviously, he's taken a bunch of different changes since that point, but I think the base kit does lend itself to a character that can gank fairly effectively. The low cooldown on the 1 helps you clear the big minions pretty well, and the cleave autos can help you take care of the side minions on buff camps. I don't think that it's a horrible pick in the jungle. I think it certainly warrants some experimentation, and if there's a guy who's going to do it, it's going to be Cyno.
And I like that they still have inbound on this Fafnir as well, can provide plenty sort of magical damage to go alongside Wolfie there, so you don't have to worry maybe about this warrior providing this extra presence there in the jungle with this draft. I think that Obey are in a pretty good spot here to try and make this work, but on the other side, eUnited have a ton of area that you just cannot walk into, whether it's Whirlpool, Kraken, or Dharmic Pillars, or Wild Hunt from this Kurnos. They've got a ton of AoE control.
They do, and that's going to be important. I think that this whole draft from United really just screams punish inbound to me, because Ganesh and Kurnos are 2 of the best characters in the entire game, and Poseidon as well, at insta-killing Fafnir as soon as he transforms. If you could force that transform out and have Kraken waiting for him, or a Wild Hunt polymorph, or a Dharmic Pillars into a remove obstacles setup, all of those insta-kill Fafnir. And so inbound's timing on that Draconic Corruption is going to be absolutely critical. And so much of what has made this Fafnir pick really potent for inbound and for Awesome Jake and for everyone who's been playing it is their ability to jump in and just get a whole bunch of people looking at him and then transform into that dragon, use those immunity frames, and buy time for the rest of their team to surge forward and win the fight after the fact. I think eUnited came into this draft knowing exactly that inbound was going to go for the Fafnir. I think their whole draft is really set up to counter it. And it's going to be a lot of pressure on inbound to make sure that he is getting value out of those transforms, that it isn't just one ult and he's out of position and he's dead, that he's going to get some more overextensions from eUnited than clean picks.
It's interesting. I mean, I feel like when Fafnir was good, what was it, in Season 4 with the double hunter compositions that were so popular, he would have looked a little bit better over on the eUnited side of things, and that answer did kind of creep up when he was really prevalent in that area. That, wait, the ultimate's not a big safety button for him. It's actually the opposite. It's like a big target button, right? Because you know exactly where he's landing. It's so interesting, that dynamic with Fafnir, and when you can safely afford to commit your resources onto him. And I think inbound is someone that does make that equation a little bit easier than maybe some other supports. This year, he has shown that he'll step a little bit too far forward sometimes. That has eased up in these last couple of weeks, but as you said, a lot going to be riding, I think, on how much value inbound can get out of this Fafnir pick here this game, because they're going to need his control. They've got some decent tools here, aggro, but I don't know. It doesn't feel like a lot of great CC on Obey's side here.
No, it's pretty low confirmed CC. I mean, you've got Wowie's Ricochet, single target, Hammer, single target. Wolfie's got the AoE pull, but that's fairly slow to go off, and there's pretty decent mobility for most of eUnited.
They should have some ways to try and get out from around that. It's action on both sides. Snoopy in trouble here and left. There might be a gank in right too, but Snoopy gets caught by the tether. But Cyno off the mark there with the flail. They want to keep up the chase. Lord of the Afterlife doesn't connect either, and yet still Cyno able to find the first blood. It's Snoopy that falls, and inbound makes it all happen. What about Ducky on the right-hand side? He's fighting 3, but the execute's too strong, and eUnited make it 1-for-1.
Man, really, really close. That almost got choked by Obey. And look at this, a blink in from Cynogenetics, still level 4, and he's in trouble.
Yeah, I don't think he was expecting this. He is in a really bad spot right now, but do they have the last bit of damage? Cyno can take up a tower shot at this point, no problem. You wouldn't have known it was a 2-0 by the way this gank initially went here in Mifflin, or not Mifflin, aggro, but that's exactly how Cyno's looking.
Yeah, not exactly the cleanest sort of kill there, or the first one at least. Second one a little bit cleaner from pretty good CC chain. But overall, at the end of the day, Cyno still gets 2 kills and walks away. And so that's what really matters here for Obey. eUnited gets something on this right-hand side. They get pressure on the Ducky, but they don't get the blue buff invade off because of the different timers. That's coming up right now. Cyno's going to come over and help clear that. And now Cyno's off to a really great start. And something that I didn't mention when it comes to this Osiris jungle is that it's extra good against this double hunter setup that eUnited has, and I think that it's pretty safe to assume that Obey knew this was coming with that early Uller and Poseidon pick that was likely going to be Uller in the mid lane, though Snoopy has been playing it a decent amount for eUnited as of late. And they go with the Osiris because he has that extra mitigation against both physical and magical, but his physical mitigation is more. He gets double that physical mitigation to magical. 8% for magical, 16% for physical whenever he's in that corporeal form, whenever he's got the full passive stack, which you get from using your abilities or using that ultimate. And so it makes it that much easier for Cyno to really dive these hunters effectively, because the double hunter isn't nearly as threatening to him as it would be to basically any other character in the entire game.
And if we want to talk about margin for error as well there, I mean, we clearly saw it on this left-hand side gank where they were still able to find that kill. And I think that's kind of important to show that Cyno's not just picking these picks where everything has to go perfect in order for it to work, right? There was a lot of room, I think, for them to find sort of that optimal gank on that left-hand side and at least still get the kill. It hurts that they lose one more on the right-hand side, but Obey definitely still in a great spot. And isn't this how a lot of good Obey games start nowadays, is with Cyno getting off to a really good start on the left side of the map. Still, though, they don't actually hold the lead, aggro. They're down about 500 gold.
Yeah, despite getting first blood bounty on top of that. So I wonder if this pick for Cyno is not being able to contest jungle farm quite as much. I mean, Poseidon zooms around the map. It's one of the things that makes him really attractive as a jungler. With the Talaria there, the Travelers for Scream as well. So he's really able to get to farm effectively.
He really wants to fight here and gets the beads out from Scream. I think Scream was right, too. Wolfie lurking just behind the corner. And that could have easily been death for the Poseidon jungle. Good call by him to get right back out of there.
But a good call from Cyno as well to respect those beads and not try and Lord of the Afterlife Scream on that tether stun. Because if Scream just beads and Krakens at his feet, then Cyno's going to get gobbled by that Kraken at this point in the game. There's enough power there for Scream off that Cursed Orb alone to make that a pretty threatening possibility.
This is going to help Ducky, though. The blue buff invade successful for Obey this time around, but the cavalry's on their way. Scream, Variety, and even Genetics, I believe, on this side of the map. No stun from Variety, but Ducky's made himself an appetizing target. They can't quite lock him down, though, and so Obey able to make it back out of there. That is the small bit of answer back that I think Obey are going to need, because they obviously had a good start with that double kill for Cyno over and left, or delayed 2 kills, whatever you want to call it. But the place they lost pressure was in solo, so him coming back over there, helping them get a buff invade, riding that ship a little bit, I think that's pretty big.
Agreed, and you want to put Ducky in a position where he's going to come into these fights and be a real nightmare, because if Ducky's even or behind where someone like Scream is, this Whirlpool is going to really cause problems for Ducky pretty quickly in these team fights. Between the Whirlpools and the guaranteed CC coming from eUnited, we talked about low percentage CC on the other side. The CC for eUnited is much, much stronger and much more guaranteed to actually go through. I mean, things like Ganesh Silence, you're not missing that. Achilles Stun. These sorts of things are really easy to start off the CC chain with, and then it's finished with something like a Wild Hunt Polymorph that isn't getting DR'd, or a knockup from Scream's Poseidon ult. Those can be really difficult for King Arthur to deal with, especially. So I love the choice of tank boots here for Ducky first and foremost, and the fact that Obey is going to put some time and effort into getting him a little bit more ahead on the side of the map. He doesn't necessarily be ahead of Variety. He just has to have a little bit more farm than what he's going to be facing from these backliners.
Yeah, it's interesting. This AoE denial CC composition we were talking about for eUnited, it works really well against a composition that wants to just walk right at you, right? It makes it so much harder when you're walking across the Dharmic Pillars or the Whirlpool and all that stuff, too. So I think this could particularly work out well for eUnited, as we are right back in to the action. And so far, aside from those couple of early skirmishes we saw, it has been a relatively quiet game. Everyone happy to farm up. Hurwin, though, is on this Uller in the mid lane. And I don't know. I feel like people don't quite give Hurry enough credit for his ability to flex over into these hunters. The Uller in particular, as the Transcendent's finished already as well, he could certainly be hitting his stride here in this game. Agreed.
I think that Hurry has really been probably the most consistent member of a pretty inconsistent eUnited team so far, and I think that having that steady hand, be in the mid lane especially, where they're going to have the most overall control on the map, and they're going to be all over the place more often than most other roles, save for jungle or support, then that really does help a team like eUnited try and find their footing sooner rather than later this year. I think that that's really been the main problem for eUnited has been that inconsistency, but I really don't think that problem has plagued Hurwind as much. He's had certainly some off games, but for the most part, I think that his flexibility in God selection and in play style has been really important for this team.
We're over in the long lane, so I think it's a good time to talk about this small deficit starting to appear for inbound and genetics, level 9 for the Ganesh as opposed to 7 for inbound. We don't always talk about support gaps that much, but that level 12 relic coming online could be a big deal. Plus, look at genetics build. He's gone with the Stone of Binding second item when Gauntlet of Thieves is so popular in that slot, or some of those other health options that we see nowadays with the movement speed builds as well. How do you like the Stone of Binding here for genetics?
I like it when the whole game plan is to kill inbound over and over and over again, or these tanky frontline warriors that Sino and Ducky are going to be piloting. I think that this item is really good on Ganesh. You get to proc it a bunch of different ways, really, really easy to use. Ganesh is the type of character that will just straight up solo you anyways by himself. If you're below 100% HP, if you're sitting at like 50% HP, 60% HP, Ganesh can do the job himself with something like Stone of Binding. I like it quite a bit, and because he's getting more farm, and maybe taking more farm is the more appropriate term, because Genetics is taking more farm, he's going to be naturally tankier by levels, and so you're not missing quite as much by not going for that early gauntlet.
Axe was close. I'm hurrying to land on inbound, but he is fine, and Sino clears the camp quickly. Wolfie does find some decent damage, but has to use the beads in order to reposition. Might have been caught by the whirlpool and wanted to be able to get that flicker off, so they're able to disengage. But I think getting the beads off from Wolfie, not bad there for eUnited on the back of admittedly losing that red buff in the invade from Obey. At least they got something, as they're not done just yet. Inbound is all the way into the backline. Hammer onto Scream to start the fight, but they drop the Dharmic Pillars, and Inbound is going to die to that every single time, but there's still aggression from Obey. Sino has looked for Scream way in the backline, but Scream back under the tier 2 still falls anyway because Sino doesn't miss a shot. It's 1-for-1.
Yeah, so you're going to die to that every time there, Finch, but maybe we don't need to use all 3 ultimates at the exact same time. That seems a little bit excessive, and immediately Sino hits the gas pedal. It doesn't matter if they kill inbound every time if they're going to triple ult him. You got to really budget to 2 ults max. You know, you got to get your budget right, it feels like, for that play.
Were you guys wondering how much damage Variety does? Because we just got the update on that. Turns out it's a lot. Wolfie falls to the hail of arrows over the wall. Irwin, my man, is swinging right now, and Variety's not done yet. Aggressive into the tier 2, but gets locked down. Takes an extra tower shot. Not quite enough damage from Sino to get the kill, but maybe Ducky can play clean up. Good silence from Genetics. Prevents the engage from going any further, but he's still hungry for a bit more. Snoopy having to continue to run, but Genetics keeps up the peel with this Ganesh. That should be enough space.
Ducky has that Excalibur's Wrath ready to go. You could tell by the glowing sword, but not going to be in range to catch Snoopy in that moment. Great peel from Genetics, as you highlighted. And that play is big in my mind for eUnited because they use Variety's teleport. They just really got bullied out of a team fight where it looked like they were going to win after losing a red buff. It was starting to swing pretty heavily for Obey, and the gold lead still says that it is in Obey's favor. But that play for Variety to rotate in, expend the teleport, use the blink, get the Aegis out from Wolfie, make him even more vulnerable. Now he has no relics for a team that has Ganesh and Poseidon, so that should be a kill if United start to play aggressively anytime soon. And just for momentum's sake, you know, Hurwind getting a really nice blind hail of arrows over the wall. That's the kind of stuff that pumps your team up, man, that makes you feel like you're in the zone. When you're hitting stuff like that, how can we lose? You know, you're feeling good about where you are, even if you aren't necessarily in the lead in the game right at this moment.
You covered it, though. What could potentially become a glaring issue here for eUnited? I thought the strength of their composition was that they had 3 ways to make sure that inbound died every time he ulted, right? Not necessarily that they need to stack the 3 of them. I'm sure we'll see it cleaned up there in the future, but their ability to get that job done with 1 or 2 tools would be important, as Pyromancer is low, but Sino's nearby, blinks in, Kraken for the confirm, it's a bit early. Obey are the ones that claim the Pyromancer and the life of Scream. Wolfie gets the credit. Sino able to avoid for a little while, but Variety gets the execute, so it's 1-for-1, but Ducky locks down Ganesh. That will be it for Genetics. 2-for-1 now in favor of Obey.
Man, one of the things that really impressed me when Scream pulled out this Poseidon pick last time, or the first time, was that he was really, really on point with his objective secure, which is a really big part of playing something like Poseidon in the jungle. eventually you're going to learn that even the best of objective securers end up losing some, and Scream that time mistimes his Kraken, opens up the door for Sino to steal it away, and again, Sino with a big impact play on this Warrior. I know, it feels rough to put Obey's struggles at the beginning of the year at one player's feet, and it certainly isn't all because of the replacement of Weekend that Obey is looking better. But when Sino's playing this well, it kind of pokes some holes in that argument, doesn't it? I mean, he has just been so impactful in every single game that Obey has won. It's really been, let's think of the biggest plays of the game. Sino did this, Sino did that, Sino did another thing. I mean, it's just been the way Obey has won these last few weeks, has really been through big plays from Sino, and he made another one of the Pyromancer.
It was part of my skepticism when after their first set, when they got that victory, is because I thought, how often is Sino going to have last-minute Gold Fury steals or plays like that, right? That cannot happen every game. But yet then Sino is able to find that Tier 2 tower dive earlier on in the game where he lands the Spirit Flail and the Sickle. He lands everything, right? I mean, just now on this Pyromancer, he's instrumental in maybe forcing the Kraken early because of some of Sino's pressure. I mean, there's a lot there to consider, and that's all on the back of what Sino does, these sort of intangibles where he's placed in the right spot and is landing all these extra abilities too. I mean, I think legitimately we could say that Sino has independently made a huge difference for this team. It's a lot of him.
And that's before we talk about the intangibles, like what Wolfie was saying during his interview, that he's taken over a lot of shot calling responsibilities and leaves Wolfie a little bit more free to focus on his mechanics and things like that are so important.
Wolfie has looked better.
It's been night and day, man, with this Obey team, no doubt about it. Take a look at Scream's build, by the way. He's gone for a build that's been taking over the ranked streets, the Toxic Blade third item on Poseidon. And it's something that I've tried, I've tested, because I've been told it's really good. It feels so good. And it does feel good, because boy, are you fast. You are zooming around the map with this Toxic Blade. But I really feel like that lack of damage really hurts you. Just going a 0 power item third, especially after going a low power boot choice, just feels like I think that Scream's going to be lacking too much damage to really kill this front line.
We might have a chance to find out as eUnited getting aggressive. No Fury here. We're 2.5 minutes away. They just like their chances of locking down inbound, but they let up on the gas. Inbound basically able to just kind of walk out of there. Some nice damage from Wolfie, perhaps discouraging eUnited from hard committing there any further. But it's odd. We're seeing another bit of resurgence, I feel like, of just movement speed in general across all these builds. I mean, take a look at where Sino is now. I mean, he's got the Wingblade third item slotted into his build as well. I think that people are starting to just kind of realize that, hey, going fast is pretty good in and of itself.
Yeah, I don't know. I just feel like, remember, let's look at the overall point of this composition here. It's to use some ultimates and some lockdown to kill Fafnir as soon as he transforms, and then still have enough left in the tank in order to kill the rest of the front line that's coming at you. Scream is going to be the primary guy that uses his ultimate off of that Fafnir transformation, and so in my mind, it's really important that we kill him off of that ultimate, and Toxic Blade does very little to facilitate that. A tiny little bit of flat pen on that item with absolutely 0 power. I just don't think it fits what they need the Poseidon for in this game. And now maybe they change their strategy. We don't Kraken off of Draconic Corruption. Instead, we use Wild Hunt and Dharmic Pillars, and that's how we kill inbound. But I feel like Wild Hunt is a little bit better served on Ducky. It's a little bit better later on in the team fight. It's bigger. It's a little bit easier to land on multiple people. It's not an easy ability to land on multiple people, but if you can save it until a little bit later on, I think it's easier to hit multiple people with Wild Hunt than it is with Kraken later on in the team fight. So I think that in terms of prioritization, I want a Dharmic Pillar and Kraken inbound every time, not Dharmic Pillar and Wild Hunt, and then hope that my super fast, speedy Poseidon can find the right target with his Kraken later on in the fight.
Well, we've seen the fights where that first wave wasn't quite enough to kill inbound, or rather that more resources had to be used to get the kill, and it just does not look good for United. So I think that's exactly to your point, which is that if they're not getting this job done that first time around, United could certainly be in some trouble. They're already back in defensive position. The tier 1 in mid and the tier 1 in left are both down. The tier 1 in right still standing, still strong, but doesn't feel like Obey have so much of the pressure on the map right now. They're really only up 3,000 gold. Are you surprised at all, I suppose, that United are kind of having to play this defensively already?
I mean, it's kind of two sides of the coin. eUnited feels like we should have a little bit more pressure. You know, we've got Uller in the mid lane. We should be able to really use this mobility from Poseidon to get Scream around the map and set him up for easy ganks everywhere. We should be putting pressure on inbound before he gets too tanky for our game plan to work against him, which is blow him up right away. But at the same time, eUnited does have Double Hunter, Osiris jungle on the other side. How well does that really scale into the late game? eUnited probably feels like it doesn't scale super well, though with the build that Sino's gone for, it's very auto-attack focused. I think that he can scale pretty well into the late game. I think that I understand eUnited thinking that they can win this later on. I think I would have liked to see them play a little bit more aggressively up until this point, but I think there is a decent chance that they just outscale what Obey has.
Scream not here, but I'm not sure if Obey know that. The Fury being burned quickly. Variety takes half his health on the entry, but Ducky's low too. That is the Dharmic Pillars now on cooldown for eUnited. So inbound goes in. He knows a big piece of the equation is missing, so he drops the ultimate. Meanwhile, Sino has 3 members all looking at him. Herwin has to beads and jump over the wall. Kraken does land onto inbound, but inbound lives it. This is that disaster scenario you mentioned. Variety does end up getting 1 kill, but a 3 for 1, and Obey Alliance can keep right on surging.
And the fact that Sino is just able to dive into the middle of 3, hold his ultimate for that long, it's just perfect timing by him. It's blink, tether 3 people. Now, all of them are doing reduced damage to me, and I can play this game slowly. I can wait out all this damage. And then when Kraken's coming out, then I Lord of the Afterlife. And all of a sudden, I've dodged a lot of damage. I've put out a good amount of damage. Lord of the Afterlife does a sneaky amount of burst by itself. And I've got full passive, so now I'm hastened, I've got no movement speed penalty when I'm attacking, and I've got all this damage mitigation. And Sino just buys so much space, so much time in the backline that it doesn't matter what the rest of eUnited's really doing. They're fractured trying to decide what to do, and they know, and then Sino just having that ultimate the whole time knows that he's got immunity frames that no one can really interrupt in the midst of that fight. A really, really good engagement by Obey, and it started off by a lackluster Dharmic Pillars from Genetics, who really hasn't been able to find a good one yet.
I think that was the most important cooldown of that fight, honestly. I think that Dharmic Pillars, I like the idea. He was trying to lock down Ducky on the disengage on the backside of that fight, but no one else is in range. He was barely in range, and he was the furthest member forward. So Ducky kind of just patiently waited it out. They need that Dharmic Pillars to be more impactful for sure in these next fights going forward for eUnited. But already the fight's starting to be out of range, even if they play perfectly, because they're down 5,000 gold. They're down map pressure, and Obey are the ones that are forcing all these fights in situations eUnited not comfortable with. As Fire Giant's still standing, there's decent awards to eUnited on that side of the map, but I mean, this might be their last fight that's in range. They're not just at an insurmountable deficit if they can't defend this one around Fire when it starts up.
And something that I'm noticing in this game is that that's not the first time that both Scream and Snoopy have been holding hands in the midst of a team fight. And that's something that's really, we're talking really high level adjustments that you have to make in a game. Scream is used to playing Assassin, so his positioning is going to be Assassin-like. But now, he's jungle Poseidon, sure, but 23 minutes in, you're a backliner. That's all you are. You're just another mage in the draft. And so, whatever you get to this point, Snoopy and Heroin, you see them being really split in these team fights because they're used to how each other are positioning all the time. They're staying close enough where they can peel for one another, which is often the job as a backliner, is to peel for your friend and your other backliner. But Scream and Snoopy are not on the same page as far as where they're positioning and how we're spreading out. Think about the fight where Sino dives at tier 2. That goes so well because Sino hit both Scream and Snoopy with the same Lord of the Afterlife, which should never, ever, ever, ever in a million years happen to your backline getting hit by something that small at the exact same time. And what that's doing is it's making Sino's job really easy. He finds that huge blink tether because the spacing isn't proper in the backline between Scream and Snoopy. So if Scream's going to play these types of picks, eUnited has to work on their backline spacing. How are we spreading out more in these team fights, or are we really just going to try and death ball and let's draft to facilitate that a little bit more than what they're doing? As soon as you're on the back foot and your backliners aren't spacing properly, it makes Sino's job really, really easy to find these big ultimates and take all this attention, and it just makes all of Obey's life way easier.
That is the tier 1 tower on the right side down now, though, as Obey have their positioning around the FG. Still don't have Wowie and Sino quite here yet, so I doubt they're ready to start it up right this second. But eUnited know this could be the most important fight of this game here so far. They'll come in with plenty of tools, fully upgraded relics for genetics with the sprint and the horrific, but inbound ult at the beginning, that means that they are serious about trying to make sure this Fire Giant goes down. They want that burn. He puts onto the backline of Wowie and Wolfie, and the Fire Giant comes down towards half. Now it's time for the zone. Dharmic Pillars keeps everyone out. Kraken lands at the inbound, and Sino dies early. They've given up on the Fire Giant for now, have Obey, and they're just disengaging. eUnited, without really committing positionally at all, are able to do enough.
I think that was burst from Whirlwind mostly. Maybe a couple crits came in from Snoopy, but Sino just exploded that time.
Yeah.
And I think it's this Titan's Bane pickup there from Whirlwind that makes the big difference. Either way, Sino doesn't get the ultimate off. I think he blinked in, tethered, and 2'd, and died in the midst of his Spirit Flail animation. That's how fast he died in that team fight. And immediately all of Obey has to back up and respect it. And that's where, if we're going to group, if we're going to make Sino's job easy, let's at least punish him for it. In that time, Scream, Snoopy, Whirlwind, all right next to each other, but they're all dealing damage to Sino simultaneously, which is different from that Gold Fury fight.
Fire Giant burned low, and eUnited able to defend it. Any chance of a fight on the back end will be risky for Obey, but they want to find a punish. I just don't think that there's one there. eUnited make it out cleanly with the FG, and look how much that's done to change the complexion of this game. What felt like Obey had control for the last 10 minutes of this game, maybe even longer, has now shifted entirely over to eUnited. And I do think, for what it's worth, the Dharmic Pillar was a lot better that time. I don't know that anyone else could have come in to help Sino out, even if he had lived longer.
Exactly. A better Dharmic Pillar, a better positioning from these backliners in terms of what we're going to do in the team fight, and better target focus end up making a world of difference. And then United use their draft and their builds to really take advantage and burn that Fire Giant before Obey really realized. Even though this Toxic Blade makes Scream far worse at killing these frontliners effectively, he kills objectives very quickly between the extra attack speed from the Toxic Blade and that Spear of the Magus. Those are objective-focused items now for Scream, not necessarily what he's going to be using to kill frontliners very effectively. And that, in conjunction with the double Hunter with Whirlwind and Snoopy, means that Fire Giant's going to go down a lot faster than Obey really gave United credit for.
Scream was able to take care of the Tier 2 tower over in solo by himself. Now 5 members grouped are united, and they want the Tier 2, and I don't think this is worth losing your life for, but they've already had to sacrifice Ducky at the altar. The Tier 2 tower will certainly come tumbling down, as Dharmic Pillars means no one else can step up to contest, so at the very least they force that ultimate to be used, but eUnited in a really comfortable spot at this point. And it's interesting, you know, I don't think that the Kraken has really been that heavily relied on by eUnited. But also, if that's going to be the case, then I guess I'm just not super sure what the Poseidon does that's so great here for them in this jungle matchup. But, I mean, it's worked so far. They're now in control of this match.
It gives them balance in their damage types to make it so it's not super easy for Ducky or Inbound to just stack physical D and not have to respect the magical
He's barely doing
power
damage.
coming from United. It's true, he hasn't done a whole lot of damage yet, but he's also really there for objectives. Poseidon, with this type of build, the Spear of the Magus, with the Toxic Blade, not necessarily necessary, but still, the overall power of Poseidon is objective confirm and objective burn. Sure. He does both pretty well, and that's usually not the case. As a mage, you usually do one or the other. Poseidon does both pretty well, and I think that's why we see this pick for United. And the Pythags piece just really further leans into that identity of grouping up, going on these objectives really quickly, and bringing at least a little bit of balance to the draft. Even if it hasn't really paid off, the theory of it is that Inbound and Sino and Ducky can't just stack nothing but physical defense and survive these CC chains. And that's really what this whole draft is about for United. We saw it executed right there underneath the Tier 2. We put one CC onto one of these frontliners, and they insta-die if they don't use beads. And Ducky didn't use beads, and he insta-dies. That's what this whole composition is about.
And they have been doing that part well. Now with all the Tier 2 towers down, they still have a little bit of time left on this FG if they want to go try and force a fight on these Phoenixes. But from their position, it looks like this is more of a back and then head over towards Fire Giant, because they'll probably be out of time with the Fire Giant buff for another siege. So this next fight is really interesting, because in that last one, eUnited came in relatively down in gold, about 5,000 or so, and were able to get that one pick and really turn that fight around. Obey are going to have another crack at it And it's basically even, only down 3,000 at 30 minutes into the game, even a little bit later by the time this FG fight starts up. So I feel as though this one could go either way still.
I agree, but now this is where the kind of the rubber meets the road on which team scales really stronger at this point in the game, because we're 6 items deep for all the damage dealers on both sides, except for Wolfie, who still needs to finish that Mirrodin. Then you see the cost of doing business as a mage is a little bit higher than hitting that 6 item slot as a hunter, which, you know, neither here nor there, I suppose. But now you really see if Sino with spectral armor and good passive management is going to be tanky enough to withstand this full pen build for Heroin and the crits coming from Snoopy. I like those two diversifying their builds so that one spectral doesn't negate both of them super effectively. That's really going to be the break point here. Can this front line withstand the full damage of eUnited's double hunter and Scream on this Poseidon in the jungle?
Yeah, I mean, last time, Sino died instantaneously. I don't think he got to do anything to their backline on that Fire Giant fight. So they really, I guess you could say they dealt with it, obviously. They blew him up right away. But in a world where he's actually back there causing problems, I'm interested to see how eUnited are able to navigate that fight. Scream is keeping this mid wave pushed up by himself, and he's got the mobility to make this work. I don't know who on the map can chase him down at this point, as eUnited have control around FG.
Look at how fast he is, man. I mean, that's the fun part of the Toxic Blade build for sure. You zoom, dude. You're not wasting any time going anywhere.
And they burn through the objective as well. It's already down quite low, so Obey Alliance step on the gas. They've moved everybody in. And Wolfie and Wowie just stay on the FG. I don't think eUnited were expecting that, but they lose Sino in the front line yet again. He falls way too quickly this time. Inbound makes it back out, so now Ducky can look for the re-engage. Good silence stops what could have been a double kill for Ducky on that one. Instead, he's running all the way back. Obey may have lost Sino, but they get the FG. They push eUnited out. Now they just have to make sure they don't lose anybody else on the back of this fight.
Scream charging forward, Whirlpool in range, inbound, can't quite find that underhand tactics. Finally he does, but Snoopy is here and will eventually clean this one up. I think eUnited lost some momentum and then realized, wait, they're really low, we can keep on going.
Why are they still here? I just can't believe the fight is even still happening. I'd have left the second we got FG, but instead Obey stick around a bit too long. They were looking through the trash, and Obey were still around. Wow, he wants the turnaround play, diving in, finds Heroin, has the crit turning back around for Genetics as well, but not enough for the kill, so Wowie pulls them back from the brink, but only if he can hold on to his life at this point. eUnited, even without the FG, can do tons of damage as Wowie tries to lifesteal up in the jungle, but Variety hunting, recognizing where he's going. I don't know if Wowie can make it out of this one.
I mean, eventually Scream should be able to cut off any escape path. No one's outpacing this guy with this build. Costs Obey or eUnited a little bit more than maybe they would have liked, and maybe some more time, because now this pick on the inbound and on the Sino are irrelevant because it took eUnited so long to eventually chase down and kill Wowie. But just a bad miscommunication by eUnited on what the game plan was on that objective. This composition, as we've already covered, is really good at burning the objective, and you've got good secure. You've got the best secure on the map with Kraken. So whenever you're pulling those sorts of objectives, when you know Obey is going to be there, a conversation has to be had at some point. Someone's job, one person's job usually, is to make the definitive call on whether we're burning and securing or whether we're dropping and fighting. And it seemed like that call never came through for eUnited. Or if it did come through, half the team listened to it and half the team didn't, because Snoopy's Wild Hunt hit only Fire Giant, and it doesn't polymorph that. So that ultimate is out the window. You just whiffed out of the window. Now you're looking at Scream's Poseidon as the secure, but he's holding. He retreated back to blue buff by the time that Fire Giant went down. And so either Scream needs to hold his ground and all of eUnited need to hold their ground and stay on that objective, or they can't get it that low. There's a threshold where we've gotten it too low. There's no point in backing up now. We've got to just kind of grit our teeth and try and win the fight through securing the objective. And eUnited just maybe surprised themselves with how quickly they got it down and put themselves in a no-win position on that fight.
Well, luckily, Obey had a similar miscommunication. It certainly felt like to me. I think the idea from them on the back of that Fire Giant was that eUnited were very low. I liked Ducky's initial continuation of that dive, but he gets kind of stuffed by Genetics with that silence. And from that point on, I felt as though Obey should kind of be out of that fight. What about the second half where Obey kind of starts to get punished a bit? How do you feel like that went?
Yeah, I just feel like you kind of hit the nail on the head. They just stay way too long, and I think for the same way that eUnited felt like, oh, we lost this fight, let's back up, and then realize that all their health bars were way higher and they had more cooldowns available, and they've got the movement speed and the mobility to chase down Obey pretty effectively. So, Obey kind of felt the opposite, where they were feeling like, okay, we got the Fire Giant, that means we win this fight automatically. We have to, and so let's just push forward. Now they realize, oh wait, we're kind of weak. Hey, they're a little bit healthier than we thought. I mean, Wolfie tries to catch Hurrowin. Hurrowin full combos him as he comes around that XP camp wall. And with this pen build, I mean, puts him to 30% HP off of an axe combo. And that kind of, it must have been Hurrowin's call or someone that saw Hurrowin's damage that let eUnited know that this is a winning fight for us. And Obey just didn't get the memo fast enough.
Felt like the case as Obey did group up and grab the tier 2 tower over in right to a little bit more farm back that way, but I think the sort of central question you've said for us this whole time has been which of these drafts does kind of scale a little bit better into the late game. And I think we know at least one answer, which is that Sino has not scaled very well into the late game, has he? I mean, he was 4-0-1 or something like that, like 20 minutes ago, and since then, my man has been dying instantaneously in the background. What does he need to change?
He has to wait and wait and wait, and then finally once Hurrowin's jump is done, once we've all grown old and learned a whole lot of lessons, Sino can then blink in and chase and chop. That's kind of the game plan here, especially with the build. I mean, Sino didn't go for the Jotun's Heartseeker, Erendite. I'm going to try and
he needs to
use
get
my
autos
abilities
off,
to poke effectively. Yeah, he's got to get autos off in order to be effective with this build. My man hasn't hit 3 autos in 15 minutes, let alone stacked them all up at once with that stone cutting sword. It's just going to be too difficult for him to do it in the midst of 5 people. So I think Sino, whereas he was the secondary initiator before, where it was inbound going in first, eating ultimates, then Sino blinks in over the top and makes the difference. That's what we saw early on in the game. Now, Sino needs to be the tertiary initiator. He needs to go in 3rd or 4th and really be this late-game clean-up machine with those Osiris. Because if Sino can take 1v1s, win 1v1, then transfer to another 1v1, he can win 2 individual fights by himself. This build facilitates that at this point in the game, but you can't take 3-on-1 anymore. The enemy team just has too much damage.
And that's what he's been trying to do here in these last few fights. And as you've mentioned, it really hasn't worked. I mean, I've barely gotten to see Sino beyond whatever the initiation is. If it's Lord of the Afterlife to get in, that's the last thing I saw from him. If it's Blink to get in, that's the last thing my man got to do before they sat him down for a little while. So I think that more of an adapting approach, a slower, more steady approach to these team fights could certainly do him some good, as just diving in has not worked so far. eUnited controlling the neutral ground, though, around the Fire Giant here at this point, kind of daring Obey to come in. I'm surprised, though, eUnited have taken this passive of a line. They've shown their ability to burn this Fire Giant at this point is really quick.
Yeah, but Obey has also shown that their response time is pretty good, and their ability to get in there and disrupt is solid as well.
The Dharmic Pillars was committed there onto that Fire Giant, and at this point it hasn't gotten much. Inbound jumps in, but he holds onto the ult, but he and Ducky both taking this much poke could be problems for them. So Variety closed the gap and is able to find the stun. The Whirlpool there too, and Inbound is suddenly an execute threshold. The Sun should keep everybody zoned out from Wowie, but now eUnited, having committed very little, can just turn right back towards the Fire Giant, and Obey, lips still bleeding, have to force their way into this fight if they're going to find a way to keep this one going, but looks like we might not be able to see exactly what it is that's happening. We'll come back out to us, and don't worry, guys, we'll get you right back in to that exciting conclusion in a moment. But that's exactly the kind of slow and steady start to the fight that eUnited needed.
Yeah, but losing Dharmic Pillars is a big deal. We've seen how important that cooldown is for genetics. And now the question's going to be, we've got Inbound transforming, we've got all these ults that punish him. What are we using in this moment, and how are we going to be able to make sure that we have enough to win the rest of the fight afterwards? Are we using Kraken on Inbound, or are we using it on Fire Giant? That's going to be the real tension point here on this fight.
And I feel like eUnited have too much poke for Obey to deal with. What it's really felt like is that Ducky and Inbound cannot stand in that neutral space between the two teams at this point, or they'll just get burned down entirely too quickly, Aggro. And you saw it happen. Ducky and Inbound, even on the back of a good fight, were so low they had to give up all their ground.
In Inbound, or excuse me, Hurwin's ability to land these long-range hail of arrows in bladed arrows, those are key. And making sure that, oh man, those critical really consistently so far this game. I think that when we look at Uller games that are really dominant and they just snowball the early game and they go 9-0, those are the Uller games that feel the most impactful. But this Uller game has been a different pace here for Hurwind, but really equally effective. I think he's been a really, really key part of these winning fights for eUnited.
A great point. I thought he was slow to start, but he's looked better now. Sino has found a kill in the backline. He's gotten Snoopy and Hurwin. That's the backliners both dead, and both of them claimed by Sino, the new addition for Obey. So clearly stepping up when needed most. It's just Scream and Genetics that are left to try and deal with this. But with Inbound in the Draconic Corruption, amplifying everyone's ability to burn the Fire Giant, I don't think United can make it in time. Genetics zoned out, Scream as well, and Obey in the late game have reclaimed their grasp on the lead.
Yeah, some unfortunate timing. The most important fight, we don't get a chance to really break it down, but all that really matters at the end of the day is that Obey come out, lose no one, kill 3 members, and that's probably going to be game, Finch. I can't imagine there's a way that Obey can't end here.
No, they're in a very favorable spot here at this point, so they dive in. Good! Darling Pillars, though, that stops it all. Dino taking out early. Wolfie falls as well. We may have spoken entirely too soon. Scream gets the triple as Ducky falls as well. Obey shall get out of our house, eUnited say, and push the Order team out.
Imagine me thinking a team could end against eUnited when they've got players up. What a fool I am, thinking that one was over. A sick Dharmic Pillars, and Scream is right on the money with the title surge. Forget how much damage he has. What if they have no protections whatsoever, and I can just absolutely decimate them with that combo? Huge defense there for eUnited on the Titan again.
And this was Sino getting to the back line, exactly what they needed from him, and finding those segmented off 1v1 fights, as you mentioned. But that is huge, isn't it? Being able to find the knockback on the title surge. I think he pushed them back into the Dharmic Pillar, some of that extra damage. That was huge. And now it's even further trouble for Obey as they've been caught up on the retreat. Huge damage from Wowie onto Variety at this point as Inbound buys him some space to operate. Hurwin does get that kill onto the tank, but Wowie can rejoin. Sino will be up, Wolfie and Ducky shortly. eUnited can get the Phoenix here, but I don't think they can end off the back of this.
No, and they actually lose their left side Phoenix on top of that due to a stacked minion wave on the left-hand side, which is huge news for Obey. No Oni wave or anything like that. It just ends up where Obey's wave slowly built on that left-hand side, and no one from United ever answered it. And now the Titan is pretty squishy. Obey is going to get this tier 2 without any sort of contest from United. No way they step up to defend a tower when they've got 2 Phoenixes exposed. And then from that point, the Titan is really, really squishy. And you can end up forcing a fight around that mid Phoenix while 1 or 2 people go to backdoor, and you put eUnited in a no-win position. So that as good as that surge was from eUnited off a fantastic defense from Genetics and Scream, I don't know if it's really going to be good enough. I still think United's really behind the 8 ball here.
Still, though, what a turnaround for Obey. Just as a team, as a group, as an org almost, it feels like suddenly they're in every match they play, aren't they? Even when their backs are against the wall, you can count on Sino to make the plays, and suddenly your team has FG of 2 Phoenixes down on the other side, and you're in a good spot. As you mentioned, maybe not as ideal as it could have been. Obey certainly had every opportunity to end the game, but a near miracle defense from eUnited shut the door. But still, I don't think I would have been this excited to watching Obey play just a few weeks ago, man. They have really kind of turned around as an org. This is really impressive what they've done.
0 to 100, real quick for these boys. They were at 0 for a large portion of this year, and they've immediately become competitive. I mean, they beat Sanguine, who's top half of the league, top 3 right now. They've got this a great set up against PK where they nearly beat them, and PK's been on a great hot streak. They're taking eUnited to the brink here in game number 1. I mean, this Obey team is for real. I don't think there's any doubt. No longer a question of if they're a flash in the pan. Eventually, teams will adjust. I think that Obey, just kind of like what we've seen with Sanguine, even if they get off to a really hot start, the Smite gods have a way of humbling you quickly. And the same thing happens to Radiance. I mean, it's just the natural order of things in Smite. No matter how hot you get, there's always a cool-off period. And so eventually that will happen to Obey. It's just a matter of how they adjust and if they can really change their strategies enough to get out in front of that. That's going to be the question for me going forward longer term. But why worry about that now, man? Bask in the glory that is the Warrior jungle for the short term, because it's still working.
Well, speaking of bask in the glory, I was just saying that the comeuppance hadn't come from Mike and Panda Cat in their long success, but I forgot about that Armada set, right, at MSI. That was sort of their moment where they sort of came back and said, okay, all right, it can still happen. So you're 100% right. The ability, I think, right now of all of these teams cannot be questioned. It's just a matter of preparation, I think, of coming in and maintaining your focus in these really tough matches, in these extenuating circumstances we find ourselves in. And we might have a bit of a skirmish here in the jungle. No, they think better of it. I like this idea. Much better to fight over these big-time objectives than to necessarily throw your lives away. But it's Obey with control over the neutral position.
But they have to worry, eUnited does, about this left side. Even though they pushed up a lot of waves, eventually those fire minions are going to come knocking. That fire wave right there can retake that Phoenix with the one behind it. So eventually it's going to be difficult for eUnited to stay here. They're going to have to send someone to save that left side Phoenix if they feel like that's valuable.
Yeah, I wonder if they send Scream over there with all his mobility. But, I mean, you feel like it's got to be variety. He can TP back in. That's faster than anything, right? So we'll see what the option will be from them to respond, if that is the call. But eUnited now the ones with control. They want to start it up. They drop the Dharmic Pillar, so inbound leaps in. Hammer drops down. Crack will be for the confirm, but it's too early. eUnited get it anyway, though. They're able to secure the objective, but Scream is low in the back line. Inbound gets in, and that's the stun, and that's the damage. Sino gets the second. Wowie gets the third, and they live through the execute. Now Variety in trouble as well, as Wowie finds the double kill, and suddenly eUnited with a 4-for-0 wipe should be able to go put this game to bed.
Unless Whirlwind can do it again, and he's on nothing but wards. Coming around the back here, catches Ducky backing. That's one. 4 more to go.
It cannot start this way, though, right? It cannot begin this way, where Whirlwind finds some way to stop them. Again, they keep giving him these 1v1s, but inbound now doing the job correctly, keeping him zoned out while the backline goes in for the damage. At this point, it's too much. Whirlwind cannot pull off a second magic trick. It's Obey that find the Game 1 victory.
Just feels like eUnited is just lacking that bit of solid direction right now, doesn't it? Because the first Fire Giant they get, they sneak, and we're like, okay, that's really good. We can work with that. But then after that, it goes to, okay, well, we'll take the fight, but not all in commit, and then it gets stolen. So then the next fight, they go, okay, let's pull it, but then absolutely fight no matter what happens. And then that still doesn't go super well. And then that last fight, they go, we're full on committing. Number one, we're starting with Ganeshal. We're starting with Dharmic Pillars, and we're crackening the fire. We're doing everything we can onto the fire, and Obey steamrolls them after that. So they try a little bit of everything, and nothing really works that well. And I feel like they're lacking that cohesive direction right now on exactly what they're doing on fights like that. I think that's really plagued them.
They still need a little bit more if they're going to find their victories right now. It's just so close in the SPL that if you're not perfect, you will not get the W. That's only game 1, though. Hopefully there's 2 more exactly like that that's coming up. But I got to mention, man, my chair's not feeling super comfortable. Hindu, maybe you got any advice for me on that one?
Yeah, don't worry. I'm a super salesman. That's what I'm here for, because Dave's not here this week, so it's me to take over. If you didn't know, we're doing a very nice little opportunity with Maxonomic where you can get yourself a bit of a discount on a chair. $50 off when you use the code SMITEMAX. And I'll tell you what, boys and girls, because I'm the best salesman ever, I'll give you an extra $50 in your account if you get your name written on the back of your chair. That's right. Not your actual name. I want the words your name. on the back of your chair. Yes, I'm a sellout. Yes, this is what I do. This is how we get paid. We can't just survive on gems, okay, boys and girls? Real quick, do want to apologize again for the tech issues that we experienced in that. We are still working from quarantine, as you can tell, so unfortunately we're going to have a couple of mishaps along the way. We do everything we can all the time to deal with it. I know you guys are sick of me hearing me say that, but I'm still going to say it again. Enough about chairs, enough about issues. Let's break down how Obey won that game. Mifflin, going to join alongside me. Oh, I went the right way too. You are over there. Yeah, perfect. How you doing, Miff?
Oh, yeah, I'm good. I was trying to figure out the camera.
How can you get it
Like,
wrong?
it's reversed, man. I don't know what's going on. All right, this way.
You muppet.
This way. Yeah,
okay,
whatever.
Tell me a little bit about what you saw in that game. For my liking, Obey got off to a pretty good start there.
Obey do get off to a good start. It was very back and forth in the early game in terms of aggression. We see Obey diving the tier 1 tower, and then immediately eUnited return that dive. We didn't really see the first establishing play for either team to establish a lead until around that 15-minute mark where Sino pops off, steals the Pyromancer, wins them a team fight, then immediately Obey move to the Gold Fury and take that for themselves as well. That gets the first lead of the game around 15 minutes in, about 4K. From there, eUnited is able to stagnate the game. They pull it back eventually around that 20-minute mark. They get themselves a Fire Giant, completely obliterate the lead, and then they get their Phoenix Siege shoved in. After that, Obey takes some more fights. They get themselves a Fire Giant, immediately get stuffed there. After, as Aggro pointed out, getting a little bit over-aggressive, they take a fight that they really shouldn't have, lose that one. We see the game stagnate for another 15 minutes with back-and-forth trades. Then another Fire Giant comes through. Immediately, eUnited take it for themselves, but then they get stuffed on some more aggression. And then, again, another Fire Giant. Obey, go up to the enemy Titan, get 2v4'd, essentially, for a sick defense. This game's so back and forth, man. I loved it.
It really was, and I think that's the whole story of the year so far. Every team is in a competitive spot now that, just as Finch was saying on the end of the cast there, that anyone could win on any given day, and it's a great place to be. I do want to talk about Sinos Osiris a little bit. I don't think that build's as worthwhile as it came out. Like, sure, he got kills and assist, Myth, but his player damage was low. Why shouldn't he have just... He could have just gone tankier, I feel, or more mobility options instead. Because instead he went for, like, you know, the sword option, more of a damage focus. The damage numbers he put out didn't really warrant it in my eyes.
He just wasn't able to get in and deal auto-attack damage. I agree that maybe he could have gone tankier. I would have liked him to see, if he wants to go aggressive, shift his build towards an Erendite Heartseeker-esque build. Look for some poke, use your sickle to deal your damage from afar. But he was able in that last fight around Fire Giant, after eUnited overcommit all of their abilities to fire, trying to confirm it out for themselves, we immediately see the entirety of Obey, spearheaded by Sino, dashing into the backline, finding considerable damage, consistent damage out of this Osiris to find the dub at the end. I mean, we can't slight the build. It was just maybe the execution on the build in that mid-game team fight phase.
Well, we've seen a lot of this so far with Obey and how they've started things off pretty effectively in game number 1s. But the problem is the games continue on. They start to flounder in games 2 and 3. So I'm hoping as we look at this one now, it's going to end up getting back and get sorted out a little bit more into the picks and bans. Because that's what Wolfie was saying, right, Myth? Is that they've done well in game 1, but then had issues in game 2. And that's kind of hit morale a little bit.
Maybe they just get a little bit overexcited when they find their map wins. Obey didn't get them historically, and now they're starting to find them. They get a little bit too confident off the front end, and they maybe flounder a bit in game 2 and 3. But it seems like from that Wolfie interview, they've identified that. They're going to be able to address it, keep their heads on straight, reset their mentality, and bring the same energy that they had in game 1. And if that's the case, it's going to be an incredibly exciting game. I mean, that might have been my favorite match to watch of the year.
Wow, I mean, every single week I feel like we're constantly saying that, though. Man, that was my favorite game of the week, and it's only day 1 of week 8. Let's get into picks and bans then for game 2 and see if there's any adaptation from either team here. I will say I think eUnited in the solo lane, Variety had a very, very good start. You got a bit of support from Scream early on. They really nullified King Arthur in that early game there, Myth. I mean, it was 9 totems of coup for Variety. That's 25 gold per player. That adds up. That's nearly 1,000 gold that he got in terms of a lead for his team off that.
Yeah, Ducky was costing a little bit in the early game. That early death really set him behind, but at that same time, he was able to rotate into team fights and make his impact there. If Ducky gets a little bit more assistance in his lane, I think we'll see him see a little bit more fruition. He'll be able to maybe pop off and use that King Arthur aggressively, but as you said, Variety did a fantastic job of immediately stuffing out that aggressive pick.
Yeah, it really worked out well for them. So into picks and bans we go again. Obey will be first pick again, banning Afro and Horus, so business as usual. eUnited once again going to go back to the Nike. Do you expect many changes in the picks and bans here, Myth? Or is this going to be like maybe 1 or 2? What would you look to take away from Obey to nullify them here?
Maybe get Bobby off of this Fafnir. It seems to be one of his most comfortable picks. Yes, he's jumping in aggressively. Yes, they were able to exploit him in those mid-game fights, but the advantage that he brought to his team with underhanded tactics, with Coerce, able to boost the damage on his squad and really elevate those auto-attack builds that we saw out of Sino, that was hugely integral to a lot of the team fights that they were able to win. So if you want to target him out, put Bobby on something that's a little bit easier to focus. Maybe you can exploit him a little bit earlier on in the match.
Well, just checking my bans as well, and they seem to be identical to game number 1. No actual changes between the two. And Obey, once again, going to go back to Merlin. I think that's one thing to really mention. If Wolfie's just going to play Merlin and Raijin the whole time, it makes sense to me. But at the same time, teams can start to, you know, play around that a little bit more, and we'll see if eUnited can answer back. They're going to go with the Ul once again. How do you feel Horiwin played on that last game?
Hurrywin was finding fantastic ability placement. He was able to get incredibly aggressive. A lot of the pre-20-minute aggression was spearheaded by Hurrywin rotating into the long lane, finding his axe stun, setting up for his squad. He did a really good job of fighting outside of his lane, but you don't pick Uller to fight outside of your lane. If you're picking Uller in a Merlin, you have a lot of solo kill potential there. I think Obey did a decent job of mitigating that by having the focus be on the 3v3 in mid. But by that same note, Hurry should be able to pop off a little bit harder and try and keep Wolfie from getting off to as good of a start as he got last game.
So the Ganesha once again with a good defense we saw just towards the end from Genetics there. No surprise to see them go back to that. And Fafnir, once again, you were mentioning this for Bobby. You might wanted to see a ban against this potentially or take it away from him. I do agree. I think this Fafnir is a kind of a good catch situation of an aggressive support having to play a bit more defensive at times. Fafnir kind of fits that role pretty well.
And he gets that pseudo Aegis when he decides to use that Dragon Transformation, which is going to cover some of the weaknesses of Bobby, which is jumping into 5 members without any backup whatsoever. He can use that Dragon Transformation to buy himself time, get his escape ability back up. It fits his playstyle incredibly well. I think if you put him on a more standard support, he would be incredibly exploitable with his aggressive playstyle, but if Obey is able to get Fafnir, no reason not to.
And King Arthur going to get banned by United now, so it will be a change up for Obey at least. Won't be able to have that King Arthur in the solo lane anymore. And United already gone with their Thor option here, more than likely for the jungle, would say, which means Poseidon may not be looked at in the same sort of vein here. And maybe that's the reason, you know, Poseidon was pretty effective in certain scenarios, good secure. Obviously, the cripple very effective against the likes of King Arthur. But if you get to ban it away, you don't have to pick it, I guess.
I like the Thor pickup in general because we saw that Scream wasn't nearly as impactful in the early game as Sino was on this Osiris. You don't really expect him to be on this late game mage, but the level of deficit there, the jungle difference in the early game was so huge, and it's what allowed Obey to go into that 25-minute mark with a 6,000-7,000 gold lead. We saw that Scream was struggling with a 1-in-4 slash line, if memory serves correctly, and that's purely due to the fact that Osiris has a fantastic 1v1 matchup there. Obey's comp is incredibly dive heavy, so having a squishy mage to dive, another one, that's got to be incredibly nice. So picking up this Thor means that he's going to have global pressure, he's going to be able to fight into the early game, he should be able to counter gank a lot more effectively. It's a very smart pickup from United.
Hoyi going to be locked in then for Wowie as well for Obey, and it's a good look for him. He had a pretty good game in game 1. Let's see if he can return to form there. Doesn't look like Obey are really making much of a change here. Obviously, King Arthur not available, but their last hover now going to potentially be this Jormungandr, so nullify the lane a little bit. Fearless doesn't really work as effectively from tier on a Jormungandr due to the passive more than anything else. So we'll see exactly what he can make do with this when it comes to the team fights. Obey running it back for the most part. You feel good about that?
I mean, can't feel bad when you're running back a dub, right? Obey's got to feel pretty comfortable about it. And the Jormungandr addition means that he's going to be able to play a lot more safely. Maybe Variety doesn't get off to as hot of a start either. Snoopy on this Ola run, though, that's spicy.
Is it Snoopy, though?
It could be. Having Ola run in mid,
right?
especially against Osiris, that might be a bit risky. That's so easy to dive in the early game. So you want to put him in the long lane for my money to have that additional player to help you out, make sure you're not dove quite as easily. Having Snoopy on this highly technical god is a bit of a question mark to me, just because he had a very lackluster game 1. He was very close to the bottom of the damage charts. Even when they were winning, it wasn't really off the back of Snoopy's positioning and play. But maybe having him have this huge team fight ultimate, he's going to be able to bring value even if he can't find the autos.
Yeah, I guess with how you're looking at this as well, all onto the dual lane makes more sense. But Snoopy, one of the premier original mage players in the dual lane of days of old, his Vulcan screams out to me immediately as one of the first ones there. We'll see how this one breaks down then. Myth, can Obey take this 2-0, or are eUnited gonna bounce back?
It feels almost unthinkable, doesn't it? But that is in the cards, and Obey 2-0 certainly possible here. But the big question of the desk, where this Oloran was going, has been answered. It will be for her when to pilot in the middle lane. Snoopy this time will take the Uller over to the long lane. How do you feel about Oloran? I feel like nowadays, like we mostly see him mid anyway, but could certainly go long if they chose.
Yeah, I just don't think you want him against Ho Yi, which is one of his worst matchups. That he kind of just gets decimated by Ho Yi in the 1v1. So I think that this makes way more sense to put him in the mid lane and put him in a position to get more farm safely on the map. I do think that Sino can cause a lot of problems for him on this Osiris pick. I mean, you've got that Lord of the Afterlife that dives on top of you pretty well. You've got the ability to consistently slow you and put you in a position where you feel like you have to use that Sanctified Field to stay safe, and that's not exactly what you want to use it for all the time. You want to use it for kill potential and team fighting where possible. It's really, if Sino can get off to as good of a start as he did last time, I think that this is going to be a really tough pick for Heroin. But if Sino does not get off to a great start, if Hurry can get a little bit ahead, use that extra farm the mid laners are getting these days to good effectiveness, then I think this all-around pick can be really potent.
Well, remember in game one, we were talking about if Sino got off to a good start, he found a double kill here in the long lane where we currently reside. It wasn't the cleanest executed gank, that you might have ever seen, but it certainly got the job done. They don't ask how, they ask how many, and the answer was 2. Came away with the double, so maybe Sino get off to a similarly good start here in this second game around, but this time United have all the pressure. Snoopy is playing this Uller in the long lane, and ironically, I wonder if we might get a bit more of Uller's prevalence early this time as opposed to late, even though Uller was played in the mid role last time.
Yeah, this usually results in a little bit more purple buff invades, just really big pressure with something like Ganesh as well that helps you clear even more, makes you do more damage to the minions. Turn of Fate also does a pretty decent chunk by itself. Usually Uller in duo lane, because there's another member to help set up for you and help follow up off of your damage all the time, that can end up being a little bit more impactful at this point. And I'd expect a lot of purple buff invades early on. Fafnir Ho Yi not exactly the best at winning lane at this point.
It's not their moment to shine. Their time will come later. But right now, Snoopy certainly using the pressure that Uller affords him. Genetics moves over towards the purple buff, but Hog usage there by inbound should defend the purple buff. Yep, it looks like it certainly did. So not that time, but once that Hog goes away, I think Snoopy and Genetics pretty heavily favored in those next couple.
Smart, I think, there by inbound to hold that Hand of the Gods and don't use it at level 1, but instead save it for the inevitable first respawn invade. I think that's a pretty heads-up play by that dual lane and buys them a little bit more farm in a lane where they might not have gotten it otherwise.
Well, another little small skirmish, this time over blue buff, and goes the way of Obey. Variety gets back out of there with that Fearless, but he will have to do so without the blue buff itself. Variety is on the tier here, and we've seen a lot of this movement speed build tier here. And not just for Variety, but anyone who picks this god up. So I imagine we'll be seeing more of the same here, like a Talaria Boots, Relic Dagger type build for him.
Yeah, I think so. I think we've seen Variety go for this tier in very specific matchups, and it's ones where being the aggressor doesn't matter. He likes to play this into Sobek and now into Yorm, where there's just no point in you sticking around because you're not killing them, they're not killing you. You might get the occasional invade off, but even that isn't super guaranteed. So what Variety likes to do, it seems, is really spend that time elsewhere on the map. Just be impactful in other spots on the map so that it doesn't matter if you're being stalemated in the short lane. You can go and help on mid harpies or get a fight going in mid that might not have happened most of the time. Those are the sorts of things that Variety seems to want to pick tier into, and I think that makes a lot of sense. And the movement speed build only further goes down that same vein of, doesn't matter what I'm doing in lane, I just want to get other places faster and be helpful there.
It's not so bad when you're not buying teleport either. Tyr so often wants Blink in that first relic slot, so the Talari and all the extra movement speed will afford him some extra ability to get back in towards the lane and the like. I'm surprised, man, at how popular this build has been, but I think that there is just so many ways to utilize your base damage, your lead, those types of things. Power can come from other sources in Smite. You don't always necessarily have to build it yourself, and still you can put out plenty of it. So I think that this build might be here to stay for a little while, that we're going to be seeing from Variety this game. As in comes the dunk from Scream. The Sanctified Field means there are few options for Cyno. No beads. He went Blink first Relic, and eUnited get first blood.
Perfect CC chain there between Scream and Hurrywin, but now Hurry in trouble because he passed pretty greedily back into the mid lane, and it costs him his Purification bead. So now no beads, no ult for that Ola run. You cannot afford to miss that window because this guy scales so well into the late game that you just cannot afford to let him get away with being this vulnerable for such a long period of time. I mean, the beads timer, 2 minutes and 40 seconds, and that Sanctified Field, basically a global ult cooldown, so that's going to be down for more than 100 seconds. You have to get a kill on Hurrywin or force him out of lane or get an objective because he can't step up. Obey has to capitalize on those two being down.
Do something to try to keep this Olorin in check, as Variety is getting active early. The Dharmic Pillars from Genetics and the Blink from Variety, both essentially perfect there. And Cyno, again, never got to play. This isn't just aggression. This is aggression aimed at making sure Cyno can't be that hard carry for Obey.
Perfect. And I mean, let's look at what Obey was doing before Cyno and what they've done after Cyno. We had this conversation during Game 1, so why don't we just remove Cyno from the equation? Seems to be a pretty good plan.
Wow, he might be the next one removed, as he is in trouble. The wall lands. That guarantees the kill for Snoopy. Now 3 unanswered for eUnited, as they've had a much better early game here this time. Variety got involved in a kill. Scream has been a part of all 3. Been active on this Thor as opposed to last game on that Poseidon. I don't know, man. I kind of like Assassins, but maybe that's just me.
Yeah, I think that might be just you with the junglers we have here between Scream and Cyno. I think you are the only one who's really digging the Assassins. But I agree, man. I mean, it just allows Scream to be an impact player so much earlier. And now, because of that aggression on the Cyno, that super vulnerable period for Hurrywin is mostly gone at this point, because they take a big chunk out of that time period where I really feel like Obey needed to capitalize and put Hurrywin a little bit more behind. At this rate, he's going to have those defensive tools up before Cyno's really able to head over.
Scream does dunk back in, doesn't find much but the Anvil of Dawn, but his positioning does a lot of the work. He fully gets out of there, though, with the hammer. Variety follows suit with a disengage with his own ultimate, and it turns out to be the right call. Obey were there in full force and certainly would have punished. And they might even be able to find a bit more. Inbound still low. Scream hammers in, but can't find the wall, so Inbound gets out of there safely.
And the reason that eUnited is all of a sudden playing more aggressively again, Sanctified Field's back up, so we can use that ultimate to change the course of any team fight we really need to. And I like that idea by Obey. You want to take the fight to Variety at this point in his build, because he's not that fast. He's fast, but he's not the fastest human alive like he will be later on in the build. And you're taking it's kind of like taking a fight to a global ultimate. You want to fight on their territory already, because then the biggest part of that ult, or in this case the build for Variety, is gone. It's that he can be anywhere you need him to be really quickly. Now he's right here and we're all right here, so his speed doesn't matter nearly as much. I think that's really smart from Obey, but eUnited played around it well, understood that's not a fight they really want to take. Scream is a pretty defensive ult landing. If Cyno had stepped up and pulled blue, then it hits. If not, it puts him in a position where he zones Cyno off the buff and is able to use that extra damage from Anvil of Dawn to secure it and still get out of danger pretty effectively. I think that was a pretty heads-up engagement by eUnited and Obey.
Well, team's playing it well, but still United the ones coming out on top so far. Checking in with our hunters here in the long lane, we might have to wait as Scream goes up, but what's his target? It's got to be Wolfie at this point. No one else is close. Cyno here too, so he pulls the trigger, but Scream finds very little. Instead, will just fall back. But Variety was on his way. You could see what they were setting up yet again. There's the Blink Fearless, doesn't catch Wolfie, and eUnited leave empty-handed.
They use a little bit more than they probably wanted to, but Relic Dagger first here for Variety means that Blink's going to be up sooner rather than later.
And here's Sanctified Field, the great equalizer. Suddenly, you can't do much of anything because you're trapped in here with me. But inbound, buys time, gets off the underhanded tactics, even stuns out Snoopy. But Scream comes back in, sets up for a 1-for-1. They lose Snoopy, but inbound falls on the opposite side. Sino gets a second kill, but Variety wants to keep things balanced, as they all should be. Herwin gets a kill of his own, but now Sino has a lot of work to do. Stuck between three. Lord of the Afterlife hits everybody, and Herwin's low on mana, but Sino can't do enough by himself. Fearless from Variety is the difference maker as eUnited found 4.
And now Herwin just has to find a safe little nook to find his back, because Ducky is hunting and may have to settle for genetics. Has that World Serpent ultimate if he wants to dive super deep, but decides better of it. And so far, the difference in this game has really just been Variety and his ability to be the separator in these team fights, literally, with Fearless, has really separated Obey from where they want to be in these engagements. And 2-0-1, Ducky has farmed consistently on the right-hand side. He's punished Variety for rotating as well as he can, but there's not a lot that Ducky can do. He's Yorb. That's what he does. He sits in lane until later on, and then he just kind of worms around the team fights. I think that this is a good example of a different way to punish a god, in a punish a god selection, and just make it so that their kit is not conducive to what you are doing on the map. So much of Smite has really been, oh, you know, this god counters this god because of XYZ. This is a playstyle thing, and I like it a lot.
Inbound in a lot of trouble. He does make it out of there, but that is a ton of damage brought to him courtesy of the Dharmic Pillars and the Anvil of Dawn from Scream. And I think that's the other side of the coin you mentioned of Variety's pressure this game, is that Scream's able to pretty much easily match that with that Anvil of Dawn. At any point, it can look like you're fighting one person, but suddenly it's three because of Variety and Scream's ability to rotate around the map quickly. Now Wowie in trouble. What a sick wall. Forces Wowie up into the air with the dive bomb. He did not have beads and narrowly escapes.
Scream level 11 now. I mean, you're looking at Sino, who already had trouble transitioning into the late game on this Osiris pick in game 1. You compare that to a Thor that gets to the point where he just insta-kills you if you don't beads and Aegis. I think it's Thor's greatest strength as an assassin, is that one relic is never enough against this character, that you need to use both if you're going to survive a late game dunk once he gets that Heartseeker online. I think that just is his greatest threat, and Sino really can't match that on Osiris, and frankly, no one can. It's why Thor has been so good since his rework mid-season, is just this ability to put so much pressure on enemy backliners' relics. Having to have both up is really, really a lot to ask come late game.
We haven't even talked yet about how far Snoopy is ahead of Wowie over here in the long lane. Wowie rushed the Devourer's Gauntlet in this matchup. I don't know how much of this deficit is down to that, but under all this pressure, I'd have thought he wanted Boots to get a little bit of extra help and mobility, but he wanted the Devos finished as soon as possible. And so far, Snoopy has just gotten pressure. I mean, at what point, Aggro, is it kind of a lost cause when you're laning up against this Uller and you're in a late-game Hou-Yi? I mean, he might just have you beat.
Yeah, no, it's now. Yeah, we're there. We've arrived. You know, we're unloading the car because we're here already. Wowie just accepts the L in this lane from this point on, and I think at the point where he was finishing his first item, the lane was still relatively even. So you can, you know, I'm not going to completely throw him under the bus for going the Devo rush, but I agree that doesn't help his cause a whole lot. And maybe you should be expecting to start falling behind really quickly once Uller gets that Transcendence online, and maybe itemizing a little bit better for it.
That's the Pyromancer for Obey, so this is good for them to try and bring things back. Well, look at the gold, though. I mean, we've been talking about this, like eUnited were running away with it with this pressure from Variety and Scream. It's the experience deficit that's a real problem. Gold is fairly even as Scream takes to the sky with his ultimate, but there's not a whole lot going on. He's just checking to make sure they're clear to do this Gold Fury. He finds out they are, and eUnited take the objective uncontested.
And he's got so much CDR already, 20%, going to be 30 soon once he finishes that Transcendence. So you're in a pretty good spot to be using that ultimate as the satellite, as it's often referred to. I think that, yes, Obey is close in this game, but I think that's kind of an instance of where the stats are a little bit deceptive, because a lot of this
that can happen,
gold and experience difference is really just rotting in that solo lane alone for Ducky. And yes, Ducky will eventually join, and and be a contributing member of the team, that will happen. But it feels like that it might not matter with how far behind the rest of the map might get from Variety's presence. I mean, Obey's done a good job of stemming the bleeding. They aren't nearly as far behind as they could have been up until this point, but I do think they're further behind than the stats dictate.
They're getting a lot out of Ducky to sort of collect on that lead, right? And make sure that he's able to come back over and sort of even things back out for them later on. Because so far in the fights without him, we got all the evidence we need, right? It ain't working so far.
Right.
They just cannot keep up with the Anvil of Dawn and with this heavy rotations from the tier so far. So once Duck gets involved, he should be able to help some. But Jormungandr, to me, doesn't feel like a big stabilizing force. When he comes over and he disrupts that back line, that really helps you kind of win more. What do you like for his potential to maybe help stem the bleeding when he joins the fights?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. It's not like this is a hell that's been, stuffed in the solo lane and is, getting ready to be the hard carry come team fight time. Yorm contributes, but I don't know that I want to give him the ball, so to speak. He's a good role player on the team, but he's not Jordan. There's no documentaries about Yorm solo coming out anytime soon. he just kind of does his job in the team fights, which is being disruptive. So I just don't. I think it's a reason why this strategy of not fighting around him makes so much sense.
Inbound survives it all again, gets the ultimate off in time, but will fall to the turn of fate plus Scream on the back side. That's an easy kill. They drop down the Sanctified field in mid as well. That's 3 ultimates you, but it has worked. Suddenly Variety is here. He's pinned Sino against the wall. I'm sure he would have rathered Wolfie, but he'll take what he can get as eUnited now have pressure on the tier 1 tower. With Snoopy on his way, they should have all 5 members here to try and force this down if they so choose.
But pretty low in the mana department for Variety and especially Heroin, so it wouldn't surprise me to see them back it up or try and transfer this pressure elsewhere, like, say, onto Wowie.
Yeah, my man Wowie has done nothing this game. Why all this aggression? Why the hostility? And he ends up getting away from it on that left-hand side. He has got to feel as though he has got a whole lot of say in how this one has gone so far, but he is starting to get pretty tremendously far behind here at this point, Aggro, and that's really going to be hurting Obey because it puts so much pressure, I feel like, onto Wolfie to kind of do all of their damage for the next 10, 15 minutes or so, it feels like. I mean, it's going to be a minute before Wowie's ready.
Maybe that's why Ducky has gone for more damage himself. If no one's going to be here to punish me for going damage, I'm going to go Deso, baby, and I'm going to slay him with this level lead that I have. And, it's an interesting idea. We'll see how it works out. On paper, it definitely scares me that he's going to get bursted pretty quickly. But if he doesn't, this Spear of Desolation is going to let him do a lot of damage on these dives.
Scream couldn't find the Anvil of Dawn stun. And without that CC chain, Ducky's able to make it out. He does have to use the Purification Beads, though, so that's still not bad from eUnited at all. It's so hard to kill Yorm in that position. I feel like a lot of the times getting the Relic and the Ultimate, that's about all you can do.
Best case scenario. And this is what you want to see from eUnited, and in particular Scream. He's just been the pace setter. He has been proactive in these ultimates. He's making it happen. Even if I know that I'm not getting a kill on that right-hand side, who cares? Let's fire it off. Let's get that damage off, and let's get a Relic and set ourselves up for the next fight. And even if that fight doesn't work out, then we'll do it again, and we'll do it again. And I think that mentality is so much better than what we've seen from Scream and from eUnited as a whole, so for the majority of this season.
Well, it just gives them a rolling advantage, right? Even if they don't collect, they essentially come into each fight ahead. One set of skills, one rotation, one relic there on a key member. So even if they don't always collect it, they do come into each and every fight with that slight lead, thanks to what Scream's been doing here this game. He's been critical for them. As Obey could be in trouble. They've kind of gotten a bit pinched here, but they're the ones looking for the turnaround. Scream takes a ton of damage, but is able to make it out. Lord of Afterlife does find that little mini root, so Sino has to disengage when the Sanctified Field comes out, but Inbound is stuck in no man's land, and they're able to burn the dragons down easily inside the field. But there's that damage you were asking for from Ducky. He brings Snoopy low and even gets the kill onto Scream. Now it's Wolfie's turn to get aggressive, uses the beads to get away from Variety. But what about Heroin? He's been left alone in the back line, and suddenly a 2-for-1 for Obey.
And that's Sino just being stubborn about it. Like, this is a good fight for us. Scream makes a bad mistake, uses his hammer for poke, and puts himself in a position where he has no escape.
Obey are able to get the Primal Fury. Ducky had a small knock up there onto 2 that gave them the moment they needed, and they kill Variety before they lose any lives. It's a double kill. I said it was a lot of pressure onto Wolfie to handle this burden, and he was absolutely able to rise to the occasion. Obey Alliance, just like that, have turned the game around. Now they've got the gold lead. It's a 4-0 sweep in their favor if they want to head over to FG.
Man, that fight was going so well for eUnited. I think Herwin had a phenomenal Sanctified field to cut off that whole fight. It baited inbound in, but eUnited get a little bit too caught up in making sure inbound dies in that fight, and it leaves the rest of their fight pretty split. And Ducky collects on this Spear of Deso and all this farm that he's gotten. He has a great team fight and really sets up the rest of Obey. It just creates so much space, sends the whole backline from eUnited running.
Fire Giant low, Fire Giant burned. Obey Alliance in just a minute and a half of game time, maybe less, have turned the entire story of this game around. And you think Inbound is happy to die for 4 kills for his team, the Fury and the Fire Giant? I've seen that man happy to die for free. So I know he's happy to die here in this situation. So this is great turnaround for Obey. And Scream, though, wants to punish. He takes to the sky, and Inbound, the only one he can grab. But I think there's nothing there for him. Obey have made it out.
Yeah, Bobby's happy to die for someone's jump. Like, oh, they jumped. You know, that's worth it for us. Let alone this many objectives and kills on top of that. And again, eUnited just kind of fall victim to one fight doesn't go our way, and Obey really blow the map open. And it's from really one pretty rough mistake from Scream, and then a really disjointed team fight after the fact. It really shouldn't be all on one mistake happening from your player who's really set the whole pace of the game for you and set you up to win. And then, sure, they make one mistake, but I think you got to have your boys back in that instance and make some plays around him. Just eUnited a little bit fractured in these team fights. I just feel like they're team fighting. A lot of teams have really progressed in how well they team fight. They've gotten a lot better at understanding what each other are going to do and being in the right spots. And so many teams are so good at team fighting these days, and I feel like eUnited is just lagging a little bit behind. Think about all their late game wins as of late. Doesn't it feel like they're coming from these crazy Yana assaults and Horror assaults and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah.
At some point, you got to be able to set your feet and win. And I just haven't seen that yet from eUnited.
Scream tries to make a big individual play, and so far it's already done plenty of work. Gets the ult out from Inbound, the beads out from Wolfie as well. But can he disengage? The damage build for Ducky might be starting to come to fruition. Finds the knock up on the tail end. Good wall gets him out, but the beads from Ducky means he can keep up the gas. But now he's stuck in the Sanctified field, and eUnited are on the full retreat. Scream started this up like a rogue agent, ulting into the backline of Obey. And look at all the ults and relics he got for it. I don't know, man. That might have been worth.
I mean, he costs him both his relics, genetics both of his relics, but Hurwin holds his relics, Snoopy holds his. Certainly not a bad fight. It sets you up for a potential tier 2 defense, but now this is where eUnited, I think, has to make a unified call. What are we doing in this moment? Right now, it's picking Sino.
Well, Sino should be in calm, saying he's got 3 with him, and they still haven't even got him yet. So Obey, heavily favored in whatever fight they take. Wolfie comes back to defend Sino if he needs it. And it ends up being the right call. They're able to take care of the tier 2, even with Variety there. But Scream and the rest of eUnited might be able to find the fractured fight they've desperately needed. Scream to the sky, dunks down on Owowie. The beads come out from him quickly, and the response is there to put in good damage. Scream is the one that's in trouble after all of that. The Frenzy popped as well for Obey, so maybe they can defend after all and keep up the surge. But they should be happy with what they've gotten for now and not give too much away.
Variety still has that Lawbringer, and you could tell he's hunting for a fat Fearless coming down this lane, but I don't know if he's going to find it. He's walked over a couple wards, and Obey knows where he is through that information, and of course, Ducky's echolocation on that dive down. So good decision to back it up. Only lose that tier 2. All things considered, Finch, as much as Obey really blew the game open in their favor, they kind of just opened the door. They didn't take it off the hinges. They're only up 3,000 gold. Fire Giants off them in 20 seconds. That's as much as they're going to get from that. I still think that eUnited, tossed away a large portion of momentum, but this game isn't over now. eUnited did enough on the defense.
I think that's why Scream's dunk was so important, man. He ate up about a minute, maybe even more of that Fire Giant time from Obey, kind of by himself, forcing that fight, and then the rest of eUnited were able to rotate over and make a bit more out of that time. Now Obey, I mean, they are ahead, certainly still about 3,500 gold, but that's nothing compared to where they might feel like maybe they should have been on the back of such a big play. And United can definitely still fight into this. They've got Oler in late.
And that's going to be potent, especially with this shell. It's going to make it hard for Sino. The upgraded shell, not great against Yorm, though. So as long as Ducky's there, I think that active isn't going to do a lot for Heroind.
I don't know, they might have seen Scream dunk down there. They maybe have an idea that his ultimate's on cooldown, but either way, the Gold Fury is already low. It's already burned. No one from United can move in. That should be the last Gold Fury we'll see at the end of that tail end rotation. So Sino gets to the back line, but he dies too quickly. Snoopy just turns around and puts in the damage into him with Herwin there to help out. But now they're low. Wolfie gets to the back line, gets the kill. Ducky with his Spear of Desolation in tow gets the kill onto Snoopy as well. Now Genetic stuck between three members and trying to find what turnaround he can, but there is nothing to find. A 3-for-1 for Obey as they continue to find ways to turn these fights around. They're like the Seahawks. I don't know how they win, but somehow they're able to turn it around.
They just do, baby. They just do. I don't know who their 12th man is, but whoever it is, it's working for him right now.
Sino's Russell Wilson is what it is. He's a miracle man.
Yeah, it might be at this point, man. I mean, even when he misplays, he still does enough to really win that fight for his team. Still, even without ulting and dying before that Lord of the Afterlife went off, just takes so much attention and so many cooldowns and still gets his damage off.
Oh, this could be big, though. Scream has dunked his way back in and found a two-man stun, but good job with the relic uses. Scream still gets a kill on the Wowie and all of that, and that might be enough to save the Phoenix. Wowie was so important there with that obvious Hunter sustained damage on the Phoenix, and now Obey have to leave. Again, that's twice now Scream has stopped them from collecting as much as they should have got.
Yeah, man, I mean, I feel like a player like Scream, you know, he has a good early game, then makes a pretty bad mistake that really opens the door for Obey to come back into this game. I think that Scream's the type of dude that really internalizes that and goes, I'm not letting us lose the game because of what I did. If we're going to lose, It's not going to be because of me. I'm going to make plays to get us back into it, and he's done that so far.
Yeah, I think you can make the argument pretty easily that he's made up for that one, huh? Not bad from Scream these last few minutes. Now the Fire Giant low. Sanctified Field drops as well, so inbound's chances of stealing it are basically zero. eUnited get the Fire Giant. Not enhanced yet as inbound slowly gets chewed up by all this damage. Obey had the momentum for a little bit, but now that eUnited have FG on everyone except Scream, it feels like the ball is back in their court, and there's still plenty to go get. 3 tier 2 towers on the order side of the map here, aggro, so eUnited have some work to do.
You got to convert on this Fire Giant. This Fire Giant's going to shape the way this game goes without a doubt in my mind, because now if eUnited's able to come back and bring this game back to an even point or even take the lead from here, I think that they still have a composition that scales really, really well into the late game. But if they're unable to get tier 2 towers, if Obey's able to defend and only lose maybe 1 tier 2, maybe even 2, and they're still in the lead come the next Fire Giant, I think that Obey would still have enough momentum to find the win here. But this gold period, the amount of this time where you're getting as much gold as you can, is really important to finish off some of these expensive 6th items if you get the chance.
Screams up, Screams back down, doesn't find much with the dunk, and meanwhile Ducky in the back line keeps the damage dealer zoned away. Scream is low, but Variety has Wowie in the 1v1 he wants, but Sino's already gotten rid of Scream, who's been the problem these last few engagements. This could be big for Obey. Inbound now aggressive. They want to try and lock down Variety, but this tier in the late game could be harder to kill than they may have thought. It's eUnited with the FG, but it's also eUnited who are on the run.
I mean, eUnited just didn't have the information to know how good of a fight that was. They saw Sino blink, and they thought, yeah, this is it for us. You know, we're down with this fight, and it's because Wowie's relics are coming up right now, and they know that timer. So they really want to force a fight whenever Wowie's relics are down, because that either forces him to be out of position and too far away to affect the fight, or we kill him for free as soon as he steps up. And that's why Scream hammers in Genetics Ultimate onto Wowie. It was all to try and get to that back line, but there was enough space created. Really, Ducky does a great job at just zoning out everybody. He kind of hid in that Alpha Harpy pit and didn't let anyone from eUnited know exactly where he was. And then as soon as Scream all in commits, surprise, it's Yorm right in your face as a backliner, and now you can't step up to help. And he takes all the cooldowns, World Serpents afterwards, scot-free out of the team fight, and he's already bought enough time for the rest of his squad to surround and take down Scream effectively.
Well, now it's Obey eating into the Fire Giant time of eUnited, but this could be a gift if Inbound's not careful. But Ducky's made his way to the backline, consuming Bellow. It's multiple targets, and that Sanctified Field certainly suboptimal. Scream left alone in the backline. He'll die early on, and Ducky is not done being aggressive yet. We asked, could he make use of this early game lead? Well, he has absolutely done it here for him. The Tier 1 tower comes down, and even still, Fire Giants on eUnited, but the last two fights have favored Obey. They're going to start moving into the jungle to see what they can take.
Not a good sign, because it's not like they're getting exponentially stronger from this point, Finch. I mean, yes, they scale well, and they're going to keep getting stronger, but not 5 times stronger than they are now. The 6th item isn't going to make or break the entire build. It just gets you one step ahead. The eUnited doesn't look a step behind, do they? They look leaps and bounds behind in these team fights. Obey just looks more coordinated. That's not really what should be happening when this team just made a roster change. I mean, that was the eUnited excuse for a little bit, right? That a lot of us were giving them. Now that they were saying this themselves, but what we are saying as casters is like, they just made this roster change. You know, it's going to take some time. Obey just made a roster change. It's going to take them some time, and they're team fighting better right now. They're just out team fighting eUnited.
They really have been, and they've been. I mean, how important was it for Ducky to get? I don't know. I don't want to blow it too far out of proportion, but some help, right? I mean, the way that they looked at the beginning of this year and last year, Ducky was doing a lot of work, and that was where the sentence ended. Now he feels like he has this sort of secondary member with him. Hard to call Sino a secondary member, but when they're this two-pronged attack instead, it's so much stronger. Where Ducky, in that space that Sino's making, even when he dies in the fight, he knows he can trust Ducky to capitalize on it. It's been so strong for Obey, and hasn't Wolfie looked so much better now too, with a little bit less of that burden on his plate with shot calling? You heard him talk about it. He's returned back to that form we saw him with Rival. Obey legitimately, man, I said it coming in, I thought they were slightly favored in it, and it's kind of looked that way.
It has. It's played out that way too. I mean, they just have been the team that, outside of the first 15 minutes of Game 2 here, has really set the pace. Now, at the very beginning of this game, it was Scream setting the pace. It was Variety with his rotations. But Obey really did what all good teams do this year, which is only let you make one mistake. You're allowed to make exactly one. And if you make one or even more than that, you're going to lose. A lot of times. You're going to lose your lead at the very least and have to forge that path and cut your way through and earn a lead again. In the past, especially lower-end teams in the SPL, you could make 4, 5, 6, 7 mistakes and still end up winning the game. Now, I mean, you have to play perfect SMITE to stomp a team. And I don't think I've ever had to say that before. You could make a lot of mistakes and still stomp teams back in the day. Now, I just don't think you can. One mistake, and teams are just so good at clawing back quickly and getting maximum golden experience off of any opportunity that you give them. And that's exactly what Obey did this game. They win one fight and take the lead, and they haven't relinquished it since.
United grouped up and forced down the Tier 2 tower. That does open up a path for them. Now off even a narrow victory, they should at least be able to potentially get a Phoenix and maybe open that door a bit more. So it is good work by them. United, or rather Obey, could not punish on the backside, but still the game stayed favoring the Order side squad. They're fully grouped up. Inbound leaps in, and I don't think he was expecting a waiting trap. He's taken a ton of free damage. Now Ducky and Sino have to go in. This is the first time a fight has started on eUnited's terms in like 10 minutes of game time, so maybe they can capitalize. Sino is the target, locked down, but Lord of the Afterlife does at least hit Variety and get Sino out of there, but Obey are on the back foot as Wolfie looking for a target for his damage, but there is no one there. Inbound transforms. He's immediately the target again, but barely survives for a moment, but Hurlwind clips his wings and shuts down the support.
Now Wowie's jump is down. Teleports forward, wall in the wrong half, and all of a sudden Hurlwind gets bursted. That shell helps, but not enough. Wowie finds his second.
Was Wolfie putting some damage over the wall there too? Something came through and lit my man Hurlwind up, and that was it for the Ola run in that equation. I don't think Snoopy was expecting the Yorman Gunner to sneak up on him, so that is a second kill. They lost Wolfie and Inbound, but Hurlwind and Snoopy are almost all of their damage. Obey can definitely still get work done here, but Wowie's low. He needs to back up and find some lifesteal to get back into this.
Man, Ducky's not a big dude. How is his backpack this big? Like, to fit this many people all at once, it's got to be some sort of magic Jansport he's rocking through on this Yorm, because he is just making so many plays. Every time you feel like United's about to break back and make a big play. I mean, Scream, wall onto Wolfie, Snoopy, full combos him right off of it. That's great communication and target focus and mechanical skill by both those players. And Ducky immediately punishes Snoopy, forever taking his eyes off where this Yorm is coming from. Knocks him up, kills him before that Aegis comes through. Yorm is the type of character that, like I said, it's double, triple teaming Michael Jordan and making someone else beat you. And Ducky's just having the Scottie Pippen game, man. I mean, he is just killing it right now on this Yorm and really punishing eUnited for letting him get to this point and get all that extra farm. At this point, all that farm doesn't matter. Everyone's level 20 full build, but he's been doing it since he started joining these team fights, and it's continued into the late game.
There was a point in this game where Ducky was 0-0, and that was late into it, like 18, 19 minutes, I want to say, on the clock, something like that. So this 3-0-8 slash line, all that good that Ducky's got, that has happened in the mid to late game, in the team fighting stage of this game. At the most relevant part is what I'm trying to say, and Ducky has really stepped up for them when they needed him here too today, but still, Obey's job not done. eUnited may have made a mistake earlier with the Scream hammer that kind of set up for a really good fight for them, but since then, they have fought back in time and time again. You could say the same for Obey, man. When it looks like they're about to win, eUnited pull it back from the brink. This game is still dead even.
It's fun to watch, dude. I mean, it's not a whole lot of egregious errors like a lot of back-and-forth Smite games are. Clean Smite usually is boring Smite for the vast majority of viewers. This one has been not squeaky clean by any stretch. Both teams have made numerous mistakes, but it hasn't been super sloppy either. It's just been good play from both sides that has made it difficult to get in.
Well, Scream ends up ulting back in place, and I don't know if Obey Alliance realized what a boon they've been giving, but Inbound's in trouble early on in the fight yet again on the Sanctified field, but he's managed to survive all this time. What about Sino? He's got Herwin and Variety dropping damage, and Ducky can't find the knockups, so there is no additional peel, but suddenly they fall into the choke point, and all the damage starts to come through. Genetics is low, Snoopy is low too, so wow, he jumps in aggressive, and suddenly it's a 2-for-1 for Obey.
So unfortunate for Scream. He just timed out on that ultimate right as he was about to dunk Inbound. And if Inbound lives with 200 HP, I think it's pretty safe to say that Angela Dawn would have done the rest. That would have put him in an unwinnable position on that Fafnir. But the fact that Inbound buys that much time, takes the Dharmic Pillar cooldown, tanks the Sanctified Field cooldown, though it was also meant for the extenuated engagement, but Herwin still not able to find a great one. Ducky is chewing through this upgraded shell from both Genetics and Herwin every single time, making that relic feel a lot more useless than I think Herwin was.
Sino's done, man. Snoopy gets the kill credit, and that's Variety setting it up in the late game, just finding the play. This is what I mean. Both of these teams, when it seems like they're on the edge of the abyss, someone can step up and bring them right back from it, and that time it was Sino. Scream in the sky looking for a target. He has found Ducky all on his own. They get the beads and the ult. They don't even let him escape. Another one as Scream shuts down Ducky. Disaster now suddenly here for Obey Alliance as they're starting to drop left and right. Even Wolfie is all alone over there near the FG, and if eUnited get wise to it, he could die any moment. It's so precarious at this point here, Ryan. I can't imagine anyone's ever walking anywhere alone.
Not anymore, except for Variety, but he's walking real fast, so it doesn't matter quite as much for him. Just a lack of respect from Sino. I don't know if he thought Variety's blink was down or what, but he just can't get caught out in a situation like that. Then Ducky face checks a Fire Giant that maybe you should just be giving up. At that point, I don't know how much it really matters, but now eUnited has gotten themselves an enhanced Fire Giant, and that'll cover a lot of your team fighting mistakes, just doing a lot more damage and having a lot more sustain than the enemy team. Now you've got these two auto attack characters in Olarun and in Uller that are going to take down these Phoenixes pretty quickly when given that opportunity. I mean, Olarun's not like Kronos or Soul where he's getting all this extra magical power for his basic attacks that help him against structures, but just having that higher attack speed than most other mages will make him a difference maker on these sieges.
United now finally back in the driver's seat. It's been a while for them, but now they've got their chance to potentially close this game up and force us into a game number 3. What a way to start the week. This is set 1, game 2 of the SPL here this week, and it's already this close. I can promise they're only getting better from here. Right now, man, Obey could potentially have something, though. Scream's got to get to the ult. He'll make it up in time, though it's a lot closer than I'm sure he would have liked. He has to ult away defensively, but now United know There's at least a couple members in right that got a back, so they can at least start to get into position for free.
And that didn't cost Obey anything at all. In no world are they defending that tier 2 on left. They use a blink even to close that gap. Scream just kind of waltzes up the lane for them, and now he's a much more dangerous spot and can't really affect the map nearly as much. He's going to go right back to his right-hand side to clear out this Oni wave, which makes sense. You don't want that pressuring your towers and your Phoenixes, but it does stall out this Fire Giant quite a bit. This enhanced FG is not going to get as much value in terms of multiple sieges over and over and over again. It's going to be a few less opportunities than eUnited probably would like.
Obey are trying to take this fight into the jungle. Snoopy's already low. Sanctified Field negates a lot of this, but Ducky can keep up the chase the way that nobody else can with this Yorm. Guess is wrong over to the left. Can't find any more damage to the knockup. Variety ults defensively back away from the fight and has actually created a threat. Now he's in the back line. They don't know where to deal with him, but Scream does manage to find inbound again. Hammer gets back towards Owie, but they turn around on him, and suddenly he's stuck in the wrong spot. Wolfie gets the first kill. Obey finally in a good spot to try and maybe turn this fight around, but United disengage. It's all these small little skirmishes, these 1 for 0s, the 2 for 1s that keep this game so close. No one's able to find a significant advantage.
Just really a weird decision to fight there, though, from eUnited. I mean, you're waiting for Scream to group with you every time because he's been so important for these engagements. If Sino's going to commit the ultimate, I understand you got to use Sanctified Field defensively. You don't want to take that fight. I get it. But then it's, hey, maybe we can. You know, I'm rotating. I'm almost here. I have Anvil of Dawn. Genetics goes, okay, well, then I guess I'll drop Dharmic Pillars. And then it's like, well, he's already ulted. I better go in as well. You don't need to. It's okay to take that opportunity and miss. We're looking at the least impactful Enhanced Fire Giant of the year, potentially now for United. They got 1 tier 2 off of it. They might get this one on right. Might. I don't even know. It's 45 seconds to go on this buff, and Scream's still dead. United probably won't end up getting this tier 2. To get 1 tier 2 38 minutes into the game when you get a Fire Giant enhanced, it doesn't do anything. You know, it just, we may as well have just fast forwarded 5 minutes and resumed the FG dance.
Well, it's funny. I mean, there's been 3 Fire Giants this game, and really not anything has come off the back of them so far. They've all kind of spelt bad news for the team that got it, right? So it's been a struggle for these teams to convert on those Fire Giants, but they have not really grouped up and pushed as a unit. There have been all these extra straggling members, and that same sort of mobility we talked about earlier for United, the movement speed for Variety, the ultimate from Scream, it has enabled them to punish a little bit on the back end of these fights if everyone's not in the right spot, and Obey has done a similar good job when they have to be on defense.
It's just been pretty fractured, and like I said, there's not a ton of mistakes necessarily in this game. It's not ugly Smite, but those are the mistakes. I mean, these little skirmishes that one team is starting them because it's good for them to start the fight at that point, and it's not a mistake by Obey to start a 4v5 on that left-hand side when they know Scream can't affect it. He's got to walk all the way over from the right-hand side. But then it's the reinitiation by United that is the mistake. You know, these little skirmishes have been good to start by the team that's starting them, but you can make the argument that the enemy team is putting themselves in spots where they're allowing the enemy team to initiate onto them when really they shouldn't be.
Obey will take the Pyromancer, but at this point in the game, I mean, how much difference do any of these small sort of gifts make when the Fire Giant itself has not really yielded many results? Scream on the 666 slash line, perhaps an ominous sign for eUnited as they've been struggling in this late game to get anything going. I mean, I thought that Enhanced Fire Giant was going to be big for them, but as you already covered, they really only got 1 tier 2 off the back of it, not much at all. So I hesitate to even say how big this next Fire Giant fight could be. I mean, so far, they really have not been.
And still, towers on both sides. I mean, you're looking at having to walk all the way to dual lane to find an exposed Phoenix if you're Obey. Your waves are pushed in a decent position on the order side, but this mid lane is going to be clashing right in the middle, so it's really whichever team wins this fight can likely just push that mid wave down into an end call, but Obey would at least have to go through a tier 2 tower first, which can be relevant.
Inbound jumps in right. Scream hammers over and the wall, and that slows down the aggression. Meanwhile, Ducky was working to keep the fight cut off on the Fire Giant side of it. Not much more comes from it, though. Everybody regroups. No relics had to be taken away here at this point. We are in the full late game with these builds. Not a pair of boots to be seen, except for our junglers. Talario being held onto by Sino Warrior, Tabi there for Scream. But everyone else at this point is about as strong as they're going to get aggro. It's just going to come down to this late game execution. And look at this long wraparound from Variety. This could be what they need. Blink in, finds Wowie. Inbound has already taken a bunch of damage too. So Ducky goes into the ultimate. Sino forces some leaps. Lord of the Afterlife hits a bunch. And now they're grouped up for Ducky to start dumping down. But he ends up landing inside the Sanctified Field. Doesn't bother him as the Consuming Bellow gets a ton. But now Ducky's low. Finds the knockup. Heroin isolated in the back. And Obey find the first kill. They force the fight, no work. Scream gets zilch, not a 0 on the back of his ultimate, and Obey on top of the 1 for 0.
Snoopy's still around. He's able to full heal on those on that speed buff rather with his Aussie proc and axe stance. So now it's eUnited feeling that they can't afford to give up this Fire Giant even when it hasn't been super impactful. The members still on the map here for eUnited can have some pretty good strength without their ultimates. I mean, Snoopy doesn't care about his. I mean, maybe you can get involved and get a kill with Variety's Fearless, but it's going to be tough for him to find an angle into that back line with everyone on Obey back and healthy.
And to be fair, that's exactly how the last fight just started. Variety just walked to the back line, blinked in, and started that fight off on the Wowie, but it was not enough. Somehow things fell off the rails. Fire Giant dropped as Variety gets locked down. Sino's in the back line looking for genetics, looking for a 1v1. That's what he's built for this game. He does make his way on the right side of genetics, and Scream won't get there in time. He won't even find the stun with the Anvil of Dawn, 2 in a row that don't get them much. And now Obey can come right back to the FG.
And this one is going to be secured. I mean, that fight, I thought eUnited played it very patiently at the very beginning. I like Heroin's timing on that Sanctified Field, holds it really late until Sino's already committed the ultimate, make sure that Ducky's going to land in it. But both those characters beads and then just kind of walk out. And the way that Sino walks out down the lane pulls Heroin to the right a little bit outside of his tower range, and then Ducky just stands in between him and the rest of his team and buys enough time for the rest of the boys to get in there and help.
Another Sanctified Field. This one will slow down the aggression from Obey Alliance, but they're able to step back in and find the right side Phoenix because Ducky is still doing a ton of work. Wow, he gets the kill into Variety back underneath the right side Phoenix, but it's Ducky that forced out the whole rest of the team. Frenzy popped in Obey Alliance. They want the 2-0. They can see it materializing before them. Scream dunks back in. Heroin gets the kill onto Sino as the Titan drops lower and lower, but they get the last 2 kills. The Titan is too low, and Wolfie burns it. That's it. Obey find the 2-0.
A really impressive set from Obey Alliance.
Wow.
No cheesing with Warrior Jungle. You know, they just played straight up Smite, and they just out-Smite gamed eUnited in that game. eUnited, I feel like really Finch just needs to prove that they are going to be a cohesive unit moving forward. Their late game calls seem a little bit scattered. They seem a little bit unsure of themselves in the team fighting phase. They've got to work on that moving forward because teams in the SPL right now are just too good at team fighting in order to skate by without that potential on your side.
And it's just a great game for really all of Obey. I want to say for Ducky and for Sino, but everyone stepped up for them to get this win this time. So a big 2-0. Congratulations over to the Obey boys. But let's have them break it down the desk a bit. I'll get it back over to Hindu.
Thanks so much, Finch and Aggro. Yeah, that was a really good battle between the two, and this is just a repeat again of talking about how SPL has been, well, all season long. It's almost now anyone's game to win on any given day. Obey find themselves as a 2-0 here with a great performance towards the tail end of that game. Myth's joining me on the desk. So, Myth, I want to start things off and start that game. eUnited got off to a great start. Scream was so instrumental at the beginning of that game. He was in every lane ganking and giving pressure up and putting Obey in the back foot considerably.
He put himself so far ahead of Sino as well. They were off to a 7-2 start at that 10-minute mark, but they weren't quite able to establish a huge lead. At most, it was about 1,500 gold. It was mainly in terms of XP, and even then, it was mostly revolving around the supports. It just wasn't enough in the early game to stuff out the aggression that Obey was about to bring, and then around the 16-minute mark, Obey win a singular team fight around Gold Fury, trading out Bobby for 4 members and the Gold Fury. And then from there, it was a completely even match for about 30 minutes.
Well, we were talking off air as well, because I will say, like, Variety's early game performance was good with those rotations that helped eUnited out. But eventually we were wondering when Ducky would get involved, and boy oh boy did Ducky get involved in this game. We were talking about his Spear of Desolation build. We've not really seen too much of that out of these solo lane Jormungandrs, but his team needed damage, and, well, let's be honest, that's what he brought this game.
Yeah, first item Spear of Deso on Jormungandr solo, you're not going to see it often. I want to preface this thought by saying a lot of people like to call Obey the Sino carry project. That doesn't stand true anymore. Ducky and Wolfie were the standout players this match, finding insane amounts of damage. Ducky almost single-handedly winning the majority of the fights in the late game that Obey run with, just off the back of these World Serpents that are able to hit 3-4 members consistently. The damage output from this Jormungandr was insane, but at the same time, he maintained frontline with this health build. He had the helmet online. He had an ethereal staff to give him some additional health and burst, and he was just able to tear through the backline.
Well, at the end of the day as well, take into account, I mentioned earlier on in the broadcast that Obey technically can still make the playoffs. The top 6 teams of the SPL will go on to the playoffs. The bottom 2 will not be invited there at mid-season. Now, Obey, with how their season have gone so far, they were 1-9 coming into today, but now climbing up to 2-9. It keeps them in the running just a little bit longer. They still have a shot at scratching that 6th position spot with how it's gone there. I mean, interesting to say that, because honestly, I don't think anyone really saw that coming.
I mean, I certainly didn't. These guys were looking incredibly shaky in the early parts of the season. We see Weekend leave, and immediately Sino gets huge results, finding the first win for the team in his SPL debut in Season 7. That's enormous. And from there, these guys have really come together as a squad. They have a clear, defined purpose, and the pieces that they had before that we knew were shining rays of hope. We knew that Wolfie could do it. We knew that Ducky could do it. But with the addition of Sino, they started actually doing it. This Obey squad's looking good.
Well, the question is now what happens to eUnited, honestly, because they've got to try and find some wind in their sails once again. Starting to struggle a little bit now and slip further down potentially in the table if this continues on, whereas Obey trying to climb up. And speaking of Obey, real quick, we did have an interview with Finch, of one of the Obey members, to see how he felt about that game.
Thanks, Hindu. I've got Ducky here with me, the man of the hour. Maybe a bit longer than that with how long those 2 games went. Ducky, man, I feel like when you all first started winning, it was all about Sino, especially from us, the casters, what we were talking about. But this feels important as your first big team win. Do you have that same read on it this set? I feel like everybody showed up this time.
I don't know. I think the first game was a bit of a mess. I don't really want to talk about that one. I don't want to play Arthur again. But yeah, the second game was good. I feel like we need to close the games out a bit sooner, but
Sure.
I don't know. Other than that, I think we played team fights well.
Listen, I mean, with the way that things started, I'm happy you all are getting the dubs at all. I won't critique you too much on if maybe they're a little long to get there. Talk to me about Game 2, when you all are down with the start of that early game. It really felt like Scream and Variety had all the pressure on the map, but you all had that really good fight around the Gold Fury to kind of turn things around, and when you started getting involved as well, what helped you all turn that big fight around?
I mean, there's no way I'm going to out-rotate movement speed tier. It's not going to happen. So I was like, I'll just sit in my lane for 18 minutes. I'll build Spear of Deso, get a bit of damage online, and then they'll never expect it, because I'm untargetable in my ult. So I just ult 500 damage on a carry, 500 damage on a carry again. And with Sino diving, I don't know, it's just free picks on the backline.
Well, talk to me about Sino in particular, because I know that one person can't change the team this much. So what kind of stuff have you all done around Sino, around his play style, and you think has improved you so much? Because since he's been added, you all have not gotten stomped for my money at all. You've been competitive in every set that you've been in. You've been close. What has the team done as a unit to change around him?
Well, we stopped dying level 1. We cut that out, or at least tried to. For most of our games. And I think Bobby's really stepped up at shot calling. He makes a lot of good decision-making for end objectives and early game. And then Sino and Bobby kind of both do it late game, and then we just play off that, which is really nice and really easy to work around for me anyway, because I just dive in and W key. Well,
I have to ask, what is this behind you here, Duck Guy? I cannot just leave without asking what's happening back there with this space.
Sorry, this is Wowie. I don't know, after the win, I think he's lost it. We didn't expect a 2-0, so he's just losing his mind over there.
It's kind of like when you all got to that Phoenix and you weren't sure what to do earlier on the season. Now with 2 wins, it's like, well, we don't know how to act, maybe, something like that. I don't know.
I don't know about going to the Titan anymore, especially after that first game with the Ganesh ult kicking him.
That's right. That was a crazy defense from I appreciate you taking some time to talk to us there, Ducky. Congrats on getting those 2 wins on there, and I can't wait to see more from you guys. But we got plenty more with the SPL. Stick around after this break for that next set.
Thank you very much.